Hello to you, YouTube. Welcome to another episode of MovieKombat.
Yeah, dink, dink. No, we can't do that. We can't do that. We can't do that. We can't do that.
With you always is Josh,
And Ryan.
and we are here to talk about movies, discuss movies, rate movies, talk about all things movies, and see how they stack up to other movies. And in this fine installment, we will be talking about Alien Covenant, the eighth movie in our Predator Alien chronology. There we go.
Yeah, can you believe it, man? We've been doing this for 8 weeks.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
It is pretty crazy. Just like watching all of these movies, seeing
Yep.
them compared to each other. You know, I've been thinking. I'm going to take a little side note here because a lot of people are waiting for us to give our walkthrough of Alien Covenant because they've been preparing. They've been listening to all of the past episodes. They've been getting up to this part, but
They're
here
on the edge of their seats.
Here we are on Alien Covenant,
Yep.
the first one that has Alien in the middle in the actual name,
Yeah.
other than AVP. But I guess I guess they did put it in. It's AVP Alien vs Predator, so I guess whatever.
Yeah, it's like the main title. Like I think it's known as AVP, but like obviously the AVP stands for the Alien versus Predator. But
Yeah, but yeah,
either
okay.
way.
Okay, so for those that don't know what we do here, like you were explaining, you said that we watch the movie, we watch the movie, and then we come back, we sit around the table, and we discuss what it is that we liked and maybe we didn't like about the movie, and then we rate it, and then it challenges the rest of the movies that we've had on our movie combat season, because our whole season thus far has been Predator and Alien movies.
Yep.
Do you want to go ahead and run us down what we got so far for our scores as a reminder of what we have for the leaderboards at this current moment in time?
Yeah. So okay. So first place is still Predator.
After 8 weeks, 8 weeks strong. Well, actually, this is 7 weeks technically.
Yeah, this will be our 8th week.
Yeah, this is our 8th week. Will it contain
I
its
have a
spot?
feeling it's probably going to maintain its spot. That's just a small hunch of
We'll
mine.
see. We'll see. So anyway, what's the score for it?
Yeah, so Predator's got an 8.5, and
Okay.
then in second place, which this was a couple weeks ago, moved into second place was Predators.
Yes.
The 2018, or no.
No, that's the 2010. Yeah,
I
I know.
2010. I always look at the year that it takes place in.
Yeah, I almost am tempted to write it down.
Like the years?
Yeah,
Right.
we have written down on a piece of paper the year that it's supposed to be set, quote unquote, set in.
Yeah.
So that's why he said 2018.
That's the only one that always screws me up for some reason. But so then following Predators in third place is Predator 2 with 6.5. And then following that would be Prometheus at 6. That was our last movie review.
That was last week, yep.
Yep, and it slid into fourth place pretty nicely there. You know, it's a pretty good, solid movie. It wasn't the best, but you can kind of take it or leave it. If
Yeah,
you
we
know?
gave it a borrow. A 6 for us is a borrow.
Yeah, and so that's a pretty good, solid score. And then falling behind that, we've got Alien versus Predator, AVP, if you will,
Yes.
at a solid 5. And then the Predator, which is the one that came out in 2017.
18.
Damn it.
That one did come out last year.
That was the one that was last year.
Yes.
Okay. I was thinking it was 2018, but I was like, no, didn't it come out like a year before that? That is 4.5. So that's number 6. And then number 7 currently is AVPR, Alien versus Predator Requiem.
I will be shocked if anything drops below a 3.5.
Yeah, and that one's probably going to be in last. Well,
I don't know. We'll see.
I
we'll
mean,
see. We got still some Alien movies to come out there.
yeah, because Resurrection, man, that one's.
I still haven't seen Alien Resurrection.
Dude, that one's a whole barrel of laughs, I can tell you that. I mean, it's probably not that bad. AVPR is probably going to be in last place for the rest of the season. I'm just going to say it. It probably is. As I can't think of anything that would be worse than that movie. But yeah, so far that's where we're sitting, and Alien Covenant is it's the new challenger as we speak right now.
Yes, let's see if it can climb the movie combat tower here.
When did Alien Covenant come out? Because I don't have the
Alien Covenant came out. Oh gosh, I was gonna try and go off the top of my head, but now I don't want to do that.
Or
I think you're not too far off.
no, 2015. I think 2015.
Why is IMDb broken?
Because I think 2012 was Prometheus.
Prometheus.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Covenant was 2015,
Oh, here we
if I
go.
remember.
2017.
God damn it.
Man, that movie only came out 2 years ago?
That is crazy.
Man. Okay.
I thought it came out like 4 or 5 years ago at this point.
All right, so the 2017 Alien Covenant.
Yes.
It starts out with an eye.
Yes. Well, I love the eye shot openings. Like, they've been doing this since Lost, as far as I can remember. I can't remember anything previous to that because I don't know. But I always love it when a movie opens with an eye shot or
Yep.
a TV show.
It pulls back, and then you get to see David, who we
Yes.
saw in the last film, being played by Michael Fassbender.
Mhm.
And then the "I am your father" quote is said because we get to see
Yes.
less wrinkly
Yeah.
Wayland.
Young Peter Wayland, as we
Yeah.
should have seen him in the first film.
Yeah.
You know, you would think you would have at least caught a scene, but word on the street is they cut that one.
We also get to find out why David's name is David. He looked
Yes.
at the statue of David, which is by far, like, almost looks like it's 3 times as big as the actual statue of David.
Yeah.
But yeah, he names himself based on that.
I just thought that sounded really funny the way you said that. Because it's a statue of David, you know?
Oh, not that David. The statue of David. Those.
No, because you were like, he's 3 times as big, you know? Because it's the statue of David and he's naked.
Oh,
I
got
just
it.
thought, I just thought it sounded funny.
Penis joke.
Hey,
All right. So, yeah, we get a little bit of some questioning from David. He
Yes.
turns around and looks at Mr. Whalen, and he says, "If you created me, who created you?" And then he says something along the lines of, that's kind of the lifelong, I guess, journey or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
what he's
that's
actually
like
gonna-
the great question, you know, that's the question we all ask or whatever. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was along those lines, like essentially, you know, it's the meaning of life is like what we're here for and who made us.
There is an extended version of this scene. I didn't watch it all the way because I was like, this scene was long enough to be even in the movie, so I didn't want to watch whatever they cut out. So, what is there anything else before we move on? Because I did move out of this scene after that.
Well, basically, we just found out that Wayland's afraid of death because David says something about like, yeah, after Wayland dies, David's going to live long after him, and then you can see him kind of fidget in his chair, and he's like, "David, bring me the tea."
Yeah, and the
You
tea's
know?
like right next to him. Well, because that's a little bit of confirmation on why he was kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
Why Peter was an asshole in Prometheus is
Right.
because he was saying the whole reason why they went and journeyed into finding the engineers was to find out how they live forever, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that they aren't living forever. They're definitely dead. So
Yeah.
because of the xenomorphs.
I really wish this scene would have been in Prometheus. I think it would have put in context the whole movie a lot better, and I think people wouldn't have been as harsh on Prometheus.
But how will they get a call back in this movie?
But yeah, I suppose. Yeah,
I
that's
guess
true.
really later on we would not really necessarily need it because, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we get to see the Covenant, which is the
Yes.
name of the ship.
Yeah.
So they kind of took that. The Prometheus is the name of that ship, and this is called the Covenant.
Oh, right.
The date is 12/5/2004.
Mhm.
Crew is 15. Cargo 2,000 colonists. 1,140 embryos. ETA 7 years, 4 months. Going to
Or a guy.
okay, because I tried to spell it as I thought about it, and I totally didn't spell it phonetically
Oh.
of how it sounds. Orgai 6
Yes.
is what it is. And then we get to see Michael Fassbender again, and we're like, whoa,
Yeah.
wait a minute.
Yeah.
What is happening here? And he's kind of walking a little differently, and he all of a sudden starts talking. He doesn't have a British accent.
Yeah. I love Walter's accent.
And yeah, because it definitely sounds like.
Oh, sorry, I gave away his name.
Well, no. So Walter is the android's name, and
Yeah.
it definitely sounds like he's forcefully pushing an American accent.
Yeah.
and
He kind of talks with a gruff voice because he's like, "My name's Walter."
Yeah.
You know? And it's like, you can tell. Because one of my favorite parts is when he's like, "There's been a few upgrades," you know, like
Oh,
later
yeah,
on in the
yeah,
movie.
yeah.
So it's just
it definitely
I
it
love
just
the
it
way
just sounds very very good.
Yeah.
And then he starts putting out like charging materials. Like he puts out this giant netting,
Oh right.
and
yeah.
it's like it looks
the,
like
the
gold.
solar sail.
Yeah,
sails,
it's
I
like
think
these
is what they call them.
giant, tarps to charge. I put charging sails.
Yeah. And and he's checking up on the crew. You know, he's doing his normal duty kind of stuff.
duty. Yeah. So Walter has I wrote Walter has a different demeanor, walk / speech. And then I wrote eggs on ice because as Walter's checking the ship, he checks on the crew and they are all sleeping. And then he opens up the door and then there's these eggs of embryo eggs. Which I was like, oh, yeah, that's a little gross.
Little babies.
Yeah, well, half a baby.
Well, yeah, it's like
not fertilized yet.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was like partially.
They're just the egg, which is weird because they're giant.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I thought.
I know. I think they are embryos.
Yeah, because it's like the part. It's the part of like when the baby's got the big black eye and it's got the huge head, but it's like just this little tiny
it's
tadpole
like
body,
slight fetus. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I would say it's probably like 3 months into fertilization. I would guess.
We also get to know that there's an AI on the ship named Mother.
Oh, right. And this is important because I didn't realize this the first time I watched this movie. I totally forgot about Mother because Mother appears later in the series. So I'm just going to spoil that right now.
Okay. So remember Mother.
Remember Mother. Yeah, I mean, Mother's not necessarily a main character, but I just didn't realize that, Mother like makes an appearance here. It's basically the computer system.
Yeah, she's the AI computer.
Yeah.
And then we see Walter. So when Walter was checking on the crew, he goes over to this woman, and her name's Daniels.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a first name. They all go by the last name.
Yeah. I don't.
Or code name.
Yeah, because I would assume she has a first name, but they probably just never say it.
It's not in IMDb. It just says Daniels.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Weird.
And then obviously,
do the other characters have first names?
Nope.
That's strange because like when I was reading about something, or I was reading stuff about it on like the wiki, and it had like so Rosenthal was another character, who pops up later, and we'll talk about her. But Rosenthal has a first name that I had no idea, and then when I was reading the wiki, it's all like Janine, and I'm like, who the fuck's Janine? You know?
Yeah, so listed here on IMDb, they have a lot of their first names. But I think they mainly went based on those. I mean, not their first names. Their names that are predominantly used, and then they didn't put in their main names. Because I also remember them. Some people actually referred to Daniels as Danny.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, her name is Danny Daniels.
Yeah, and then
it's like, wait a minute.
And then Chris, the captain, he was. That's his first name is Chris. I think his name was like Chris Cruz or something.
Chris Cruz?
Yeah. That's the pastor or the like religious dude who is essentially captain. Well, we'll get to that part.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he's the guy, he followed David.
He followed David.
Yeah, like later on.
Okay, we'll get to that. Let's see if I actually describe him, then you can let me know.
Yeah.
And then he said shit hits the fan real fast. Ship's gold foil gets crumpled.
Yeah.
And they have to
solar flare.
Yeah. They start running all over the place trying to figure out. Well, Walter is like on the other side of the ship now, so he's like telling it, "Wake up, everybody!"
Yeah. Mother, wake up the crew.
Yeah, wake up the crew.
Yeah.
And so Mother is waking up the crew. As she's waking up everybody, things go wrong in a pod, and you see a familiar face for about 4 frames, and then it just gets lit on fire, and you're like, oh, that sucks. And then so they're just getting cooked.
That character's name was Branson.
Yeah, hold on just a second before we get to that. So as that's happening, everyone's all freaking out. Some of the crew is like trying to rush to get the things shut down so they don't break anything else. And then all of a sudden the fire explodes in the pod and then crisps the person that is in there with a very interesting mustache, because this actor always grows a weird mustache. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very recognizable mustache if you see it in a movie.
It turns out that Daniels is in love with this person. Did we ever find out the relationship?
They're just together.
They're not like they're boyfriend and girlfriend.
I would assume,
they're not
they don't
married.
specifically state it, but just it's inferred.
Yeah. I just like how the next shot after this is in Daniels' room, and there's a TV. I said, "Enjoy beautiful TV with the forest to forget your dead boyfriend."
Yeah, no kidding.
I was like, "Who put her in here by herself?
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that?" But then,
And it's scanning by some pictures.
yeah, and then she picks up the picture. What is in the this like iPad looking thing? I guess.
So she picks up a future iPad 78, and
Yeah, at this point.
yeah, this is like 100 years from now, I think. Yeah, because this takes place in what was it, 2104, right?
Yes.
And so basically, you see James Franco, and he's there on a rock mountain climb, and
Free
he's like,
climbing.
yeah, and he's like, "Hey, where are you at? I can't promise you anything. Check out this view, huh?" You know, and
Gotta go.
Yeah.
Love you.
Yep.
And then it ends.
and that's the last of that.
Yep, that was James Franco's cameo for about 15 seconds.
Yep, you'll never see him in the movie again. He was in a lot of the promotional material. There was a couple little like 5-minute snippets.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were running them onto like TV and online, and there was like interviews with the crew, quote unquote, where they were interviewing like Daniels and Branson, which is James Franco's character, and then he was talking to him. There's a photo that you see of the whole crew, and that photo's taken during one of those promotional materials because they're all together, and they're like, "Okay, well, one last photo before we go to sleep," and then that's when they go to bed, and then the movie essentially picks up with them after that. So they're only like 5-minute snippets. They're not really like important to the movie if you weren't that interested in the behind the scenes content and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where like James Franco isn't even listed as the main cast.
Yeah,
here.
I don't even. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't even think he gets a credited role. I'm pretty
Oh
sure.
no, yeah, uncredited.
Okay,
He is
yeah, I
uncredited.
was gonna say yeah because I remember looking that up because I think a couple of his scenes were cut from the movie too, and I don't know why, but I guess essentially other than James Franco, there were 47 colonists and 16 embryos that also were killed or destroyed during.
So
the
now
whole,
no longer a solid 2,000.
Yes.
Now we're at 1,900 and wait, you said 40?
47.
Oh God, never mind.
1,953.
There you go.
And then 16 embryos. And then I wrote right here because after everybody's awake, this is when we start getting a debrief by the new captain, which is Chris. And then
Well, hold on. Before that happens, she puts a nail around her neck.
oh yeah. I wasn't sure if that was significant when I but
I
then
wrote it down, and then it eventually becomes
it's like a symbolism kind of thing, which I didn't realize at the time, and then when I watched it, I was like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then I said, oh yeah, I wrote at the 12-minute mark, not so crispy James Franco.
Oh yeah, because you see his body getting like hauled out.
Well, no, this one was that video playing. This is the video.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, and then
I did write that. 47 colonists, 16 embryos, 1 crew dead. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, because you see them lifting some of the bodies out of the cabin. I think it's the colonists because there's like multiple things.
How much does that suck?
Yeah,
You died unconscious.
yeah,
Like you went in willingly into this pod, and then you
just
never wake up. Yeah. And then no one knows. Like you could have died and the rest of your family survived.
Right.
And they won't know until they get to the
yeah, because they're on a journey. It was supposed to be like a 10-year long journey, and I think they were only like 7.
They still have 7 years left
yeah
for that journey.
Okay, yeah, they were only 2.5 years into it or something like that, and so yeah, they woke up like 7 years to go, and none of them wanted to get back in the pod because of the fire, and of course they were like, but fuck man, 7 years. And then I just wrote when the new captain's like giving them the lowdown or whatever, I just put new captain sucks, ship fucked. because the new captain is kind of a dick, and not necessarily a dick in a mean way. He doesn't have the confidence to be a captain, essentially.
Sure. Yeah, because he was the co-captain. I mean, not co-captain. He's the second in command.
Yeah, first mate.
First mate. Yeah, that would probably be. And then so Daniels and
XO
Walter.
maybe?
Huh?
XO, executive officer.
Probably, yeah, something like that. And then Daniels and Walter. Walter willingly volunteers himself to go help out Daniels to go check out on the cargo to make sure if anything is shifted, like vehicle-wise.
Yeah.
I wrote one big giant Tonka truck.
Yeah, dude. So like, they have them in Grand Theft Auto 5. They're like the giant dump trucks.
And even and,
it's
then
like,
imagine that times like
right.
3.
Yeah,
because these things are huge. I don't even know what you would even use that for.
I guess mine.
Move a mountain?
Space rocks.
Yeah,
or
I have
something.
no idea. And here we get to hear Daniels and Walter kind of do some banter, and she mentions that it was James Franco's idea for her and him to move. So this wasn't even her idea. I just wrote that down because I was like, oh, so she does not want to be here, and now the only thing keeping her here is gone.
Yeah.
So she really don't want to be here anymore. But then he said, because she mentions, because the significance of the nail is that they were going to use the nail to build a log cabin.
Yeah, that was going to be like the last nail put in. Or
Yeah,
something
and
like
so Walter says, because she goes, I don't understand. I don't know why I should continue to move on.
Yeah, like what should I do?
Yeah,
now?
and then Walter responds, "You promised to build a log cabin on a lake," which is what she was just saying, and I was like, "Oh man, that's pretty good."
Yeah,
it's pretty good, Walter.
Walter's so cool because like it's like he's just you can tell he's got a different personality than David. Like he's not as inquisitive.
Yeah, which they do explain a little bit why.
Yeah, they'll touch upon some of the reasons why like his personality is different, but you can tell that he's not as inquisitive, and he seems to be a little bit more empathetic towards humans than David was.
Yeah. And then everyone kind of gathers. Tennessee, which is Danny McBride's character.
Yeah.
Daniels, Walter's even there.
Yep.
A couple other people like Tennessee's wife and blah blah blah, and they all drink to James Franco and then shoot him off into space.
Yep, space burial, man.
But the captain was an asshole.
Yeah.
And he didn't want them to do that. And I'm like, fuck this guy. He is an asshole.
Yeah. And he gets pissy about it because he's like, they disobeyed a direct order. It doesn't matter like what it is.
Yeah. And then his wife, because he's talking to his wife. And then she's like, you need to calm down.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. It's their friend. What I like about this scene, though, is Walter even drinks.
Right.
He's like, I can't drink, but I'll do it with you just for the when in Rome. Yeah. And I'm like, awesome. Like, it's like you were saying. This Walter is definitely the best android we'll probably see this whole franchise.
Yeah, for sure. And then to the captain, he says that the reason why that they don't trust him is because he's a man of faith. So I'm guessing that 100 years into the future, there's a big separation between religion and not religion, like even more so. And the idea of people who are religious, I'm guessing it seems like it's more now minority than not because of just the amount of science that they got. So essentially, the way he makes it sound is they all think he's cuckoo. And
I wrote down. So I guess his first name is Chris.
Yeah.
Because I wrote that down, but they don't list that on IMDb, which is weird. I wrote Chris is new captain, and he's crazy insecure.
Yeah, basically. And so, yeah, he's just talking about how, like, oh, like, the company didn't trust me because I'm a man of faith. They don't believe me, this and that. And then that's about the last that's brought up.
Yeah. So they go, all right, well, you know what? We got to fix this thing if we're ever going to want to, like, we need to repair the giant tinfoil that's outside.
Yep.
So Danny McBride, Tennessee, and some other guy I can't remember. They go
it's
out.
just one of the red shirts.
Yeah, they dress up in this like neon yellow spacesuits.
Yeah,
and they go outside.
It looked like something from BioShock.
They did. They looked very BioShocky, and they jumped out, and then they go and try to fix it, which apparently didn't take much. They just went out there, wheel it back in.
Yeah, he basically just reattached the cable and then pulled it right on in.
But so the first guy goes back in. And he's like, "Hey, I'll see you in there, Tennessee." And Tennessee's like, "All right, man, I'm heading back," because he's all the way at the top.
Yep.
And so he starts heading back, but something happens. Something happens to Danny McBride's radio transmission. What's going on there?
Yeah, it's all of a sudden you hear, and then you hear like kind of scattered voices and people can't pick him up, and he's like, what the fuck is that? And then it goes away for a second. But then when he comes back in, they analyze his helmet, and then they start decoding essentially a radio transmission from a nearby planet. And
yes,
as it's going, it starts sounding very familiar.
Yeah, it's Danny McBride's character pulls out that it's John Denver.
Yeah, fucking John Denver.
Oh, is that what he says?
Yeah, he's like, it's fucking John Denver. And he's like, are you kidding? He's like, I never fucking kid about John Denver.
definitely sounds like that is an improvised line right there.
And it's a totally Danny McBride. You can
That
tell
is definitely a Danny McBride
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
If not, then kudos to whoever wrote that because you wrote that for
Yeah.
the perfect person there.
Like I think he broke character when he said it because it was like
Never fuck with you.
yeah, it looked like something that came straight out of like Eastbound and Down.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So John Denver in space. Music was the interference.
Yes.
So they're all discussing about, all right, what are we gonna do? Like, let's see where this thing's coming from. They find out that it's coming from a planet that's coming from not too far away from where
just
they're at.
A few weeks.
Yes, and so they can go there literally and save years on them traveling because they're gonna have to travel for 7 years.
Yeah.
Now the thing is though, Daniels was like, "What the fuck are you doing?
Right.
We trained for our what the other planet 6.
Yeah.
06 is what we
It
planned
was
for.
like 10 years in the making.
Yeah, we planned for this. We spent millions and billions and trillions of dollars on this.
Yeah.
Why are we going to go to this random planet that we have no idea it existed? If we didn't see this before, why are we seeing it now?" And so the captain, Captain Chris,
Yeah.
is all saying,
Chris.
and he's like, "You know what? Why don't you trust me? Like, blah, blah, blah. We're going to do this. We're
Yeah.
just going to check it out," is what he keeps saying.
Yeah,
We're
he's
just
like,
checking it out.
just zip zap right down to the planet. We'll take a look and then we'll go right back up.
Yep. And so they choose to look at the closer planet. They train for Argai 6, but want to go see a planet they never saw before.
Yeah.
Daniels is not a fan of this plan. And so they all get the crew together.
Yeah.
Danny McBride and this couple stay up on the ship.
Yeah.
And Danny McBride's wife, who's also a captain, goes down in their little like rover ship
Yeah.
to go to this planet. Now this planet is very like the storms are bad, so they have to like they can't bring the whole ship down. They can only send this rover ship. So they goes down there and they start flying around, and they finally get down there.
Well, on their way down, there's a lot of titty talk.
I know. I was working my eye up.
Oh,
this.
I'm sorry.
So actually, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I didn't actually write down the quotes
Oh,
because
okay.
it happened too fast and I was laughing.
Yeah, I was. So Danny McBride calls the other girl, the other couple's wife,
Yeah. Okay. Called it.
sweet tits,
Yeah.
and then what do you call it? And then the husband's like, "Hey, like you can't call my wife that." Blah blah blah.
Yeah, don't
this,
talk
that.
about her tits.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
he's like, "Hey, you can call my wife's anything." And then Tennessee's wife goes, "Calm down there, sugar dick." And
Yeah.
I was like, "Sugar dick? What is this? I've never heard of this before." So yeah, that was pretty something.
Yeah, it was a good banter between characters. Like I like Danny McBride's character in this, even though he seems like totally out of place. I think
When I heard he was going to be in this movie, I thought it was like, "Oh man, where's
yeah.
this movie going to go?"
and, yeah, and it is kind of funny because it's like not like most, if not all, of the other actors are pretty like unknown. The only other actor, well, there's a couple in there, I guess, but one
Michael Fassbender, and that's pretty much it.
yeah, and then the cameo by James Franco, and the only
Yeah.
other actor that I know in this movie is Jussie Smollett or whatever, the dude who just recently was like in hot water on the internet for faking
Oh,
the hate
this
crime.
this is that guy.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the husband guy. This is the Empire guy.
Yeah, that's the dude
Holy
who was up on the
shit.
ship. The guy that was Sweet Tit's husband.
Yes.
So yeah, and that's
This
the only
guy-
reason- yeah, it was just like, whoa, holy shit,
I
dude.
totally didn't even. But honestly, no one would have gave two shits about this guy
Exactly.
if they didn't even. If
that
didn't even
never
happen.
had happened, nobody would even know who that
Yeah,
is.
I didn't know who that
So-
was. Well, there you go. There's some trivia for you.
Yeah, it was just kind of funny. But
There's a little freebie.
Yeah.
So yeah, because the storm rolls in, they lost comm with the flying
Yeah.
through the storm.
Rough landing.
Yeah, but I was like, man, the water landing looks great with that CGI ship. They did
Yeah.
a great job with that.
Yeah, the CGI as both ships, like most of the ships, like that we see.
They did a really good job.
Yeah, I really like the way it all looked in this movie. It looked really good. It was really just clean, put together.
Comm reconnected after landing, so when they landed, everyone's getting ready to leave. The wife calls back up to Tennessee, and pretty much gets a sort of a connection. But she's saying, you know what, it's kind of coming in fuzzy. I'm going to try and fix it, get a cleaner reception so that everyone can So she stays behind. Everyone else leaves
Yeah,
to go
and they're
venture
loaded
on.
up with guns.
And GoPros. Hashtag GoPro.
Oh, right. Yes.
Which never come into use. They never show an angle from that.
That's true. Yeah.
It's weird because they did show an angle from that in Prometheus, but the GoPros have lasted apparently centuries now.
Yeah.
that they're using GoPro Hero like 5s in this movie.
I would assume that Tennessee and crew were watching them because you do get cuts of them back at the ship.
Okay, but we don't
but you
actually
don't
see a POV of this.
Right. Yeah. So I'm assuming they're probably watching from their end, just kind of seeing what's going on because they're also trying to talk to Ferris about which is Tennessee's wife. They're trying to talk to her about working out the stuff with the ship, or at least her and Tennessee are bantering back and forth. And I think the other two are watching the rest of the crew.
Yeah.
So I think they're just kind of keeping track.
I also wrote everyone walks out without suits.
Yeah. I
They-
put
just very willingly.
yeah. Because I put breathable atmosphere. But still, like you would think, well, we're going onto an unknown planet that we haven't charted before. Why would we just walk out and like not knowing what the diseases are, what kind of things are in the air? Like even if it is breathable, like is it perfectly oxygenated? Like would it be like standing on a mountain, or is the air too thin? Even though I guess it was pretty Earth-like, but either way, it's stupid to go out onto a foreign planet without a suit.
But like you were saying, I wrote down everyone is armed. And then they start searching the planet. They start walking through some fields and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they notice something about a field they're standing in. Some familiar plantation.
Yeah. It's wheat.
Yeah.
Extra large wheat to be exact.
Yeah, they crush it and it's the size of a golf ball.
Yeah, it's like each little wheat grain is fucking huge. And the one guy, he's all like, "This is wheat. And I know wheat." It's like,
yes, we brought the wheat expert.
yeah, I guess you're the farmer of the group, So, and here's actually a funny thing too. So all the crew members on the ship are all couples, which is not stated in the movie, but this is part of that supplemental.
Yeah, because then
material.
they do mention that one of the couples is gay.
Yes, and that's
they don't mention it;
So-
they imply it, but
yeah.
very heavily.
Yeah, that's the wheat guy and another
And
dude
another
that we see
guy
later.
that we see happen with something else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it's like Ferris and Tennessee, the other two pilots that are up on the top, Daniels and then Branson, who was James Franco, Chris and I forget Janine or Lanine or something. I can't even remember what her name
Oh
was.
yeah. That is
She's like a biologist or something. She's with the crew right now, but
Karen.
Karen. Oh,
And
okay.
the thing about Karen is they're all traveling around.
Yeah.
And she goes, "I'm gonna wait up here. I want to do some
Yes. With Ledward.
Yeah, I want to do some ecology work."
Yeah.
And so is that the other gay guy?
No, Ledward's the dude that was hanging back with. He was like the one. That
So
was,
what's the couple that he had?
I think he's with Rosenthal,
I don't even know who that is.
the tall chick that we see in the cave later.
Rosenthal.
Yeah, she's the one.
Oh yeah. Who the fuck is this person? I don't even remember this person.
Yeah, the guy who was the other.
Oh, yep. This is I remember this.
Okay, yeah,
I got it.
Ledward's the smoker, and then
Yes.
and then the gay characters were the dude who talks about wheat, and then the other guy who
Yeah.
So we'll get there.
Yeah. So this guy and Carolyn, is that what it was? Karen. They stay back and
yeah,
whoops.
they're just doing some experiments.
Yeah, and so the rest of everyone journeys on, and they start noticing they notice the tree line is cut in a perfect angle.
Yeah.
And so they say something crashed here. The tops of the trees are broken. And then they all start to wander off a little bit more towards where it kind of starts to decrease down where the tree line is. And I think Daniels mentions, or somebody does, saying that there's no sound of life.
Yeah.
Just empty.
no.
I'm like, that
birds,
is pretty crazy because
no
like
animals.
even if you went out into the woods, like you'd probably hear something.
Yeah, even no trees were even rustling.
Yeah,
It's
there's
just
no wind.
silence.
There's no animals, nothing. It was just an empty forest.
Yeah.
So the guy that's chilling out with
Yeah. Cut
Carolyn,
back.
yeah, I called him Smoking Soldier because he
Yeah.
goes, "I'm gonna go take a piss,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, classy man.
And I'm assuming that that in the future smoking's either illegal or very 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 frowned upon, like even more so than now, because like smoking's basically become demonized at this point. And so I can imagine in 100 years, like trying to smoke a cigarette is probably considered very bad.
Yeah, he doesn't
So,
mention it. He doesn't
yeah.
mention that that's what he's doing. So he
Yeah.
leaves and he goes off and he starts trying to smoke a cigarette. And as he's doing that, he steps on something, some black
Yeah, it's just
ball
like,
things.
It's a
that are-
little pod.
Yeah, and it just breaks. And so he sits down and he starts smoking a cigarette. And then all of a sudden, these particles start floating in the air
Yeah.
and they get sucked into his ear. And then they float into his ear. And then they just dig into his.
Yeah.
Not very much either.
Yeah, they just go into like basically into his nervous system, or his bloodstream, maybe one of the two. I think it's his bloodstream actually, from what I remember reading.
So they head into the cave. It cuts back to the rest of the crew, and they head into this cave
Oh.
and they start looking at this stuff. This comes one of my
well,
favorite lines.
well, they
here.
find an engineer ship.
Hold on.
Oh,
I was getting to that.
oh, well, because that's what they go. I thought that's what they.
Yeah, because they mention, what the fuck is this? And then Walter goes, it appears to be some kind of vehicle. Or I think somebody says that. Or
Yeah,
maybe
no,
one person
I think
says
Walter
that.
says that. Yeah.
Walter says that? Okay. And I just thought it was funny because someone was like, what the fuck is this? And then someone calmly goes, it appears to be some kind of vehicle. I don't know. I just found it funny because it was just like, it was just really weird of how someone was like, whoa! And then somebody just calmly just goes, it just looks like a ship. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what you want me to tell you. I called him floppy eared guy, but I was like, everyone's wearing floppy ear hats.
Yeah.
But this is one of the gay couples. Or one of the partners here. He goes over and he crushes some plants.
Yeah.
And
I
then some
can't-
and then he just inhales a whole bunch of this
Yeah.
black specks.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I'm just gonna crush this alien plant and breathe in this alien whatever.
Yeah.
And
If they were wearing helmets, none of this would have happened.
yeah, exactly. Like it would have filtered all that shit out.
Yeah.
So he breathes it in through his nose, and then he just basically gets a whole face full of it.
Yeah.
And then cut back to the guy who got it in his ear, and then he ain't looking so good. He's looking pale. He's sweating, and he's feeling faint. And at one point, he's like, "We need to sit down. We need to sit down." And Karen or Corin, what did I write? Whatever. Chris's wife.
Carolyn, I think is her name.
She's hanging out with him and is basically like, "Dude, we need
Karen.
to like get back to the ship. You
Yeah.
know, something's going wrong or whatever."
Yeah, so she's radioing to the rest of the crew here.
Yeah, because she hasn't made it quite back yet, but they're way closer at this point than the rest of the group.
Now, as the rest of the group is still exploring the ship, they notice that they walk down this hallway, and it's a
Oh,
whole hallway full of engineers' spacesuits. And then they walk a little bit farther down, and they notice something that belongs to somebody else.
Yeah, they find a picture,
Yep.
and they find a dog tag.
And what does that say?
That dog tag belongs to Elizabeth Shaw.
Yes.
And the picture was of Shaw and Holloway.
Yes, which is the guy that porked her in that movie.
Yeah.
So-
and then got torched.
Yeah. Well, what a crazy 24 hours that man had.
Yeah.
And apparently we find out that the ship went and disappeared 10 years ago,
Yes, and so that kind of gives us a rough timeline.
which is weird. That's weird
Why?
because the separation between these movies, according to our little timesheet here, is Prometheus takes place. Okay, I guess. Yep. No, that makes sense. Prometheus says it takes place in 2092, and then this one says 2102. So I guess that makes sense. But actually, that's a little bit off too, because in
Yeah,
the movie
'cause
it
it's
specifies
2104.
2004. So yeah, so there you go. I guess that adds up.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I guess.
So they must have left in
Oh,
20.
you know what it is?
2094 is when Prometheus, and then 10 years before
Well-
that, then Alien Covenant.
Well, they've been on Journey for 2 years, so they probably aren't counting more or less that 2 years that they were asleep.
So it probably did happen
So-
in 2092. I can't
So
remember. I'd
to
have
them,
look
it's
back
only
up
been
that.
10 years, but 2 years is essentially missing from their life.
Yeah.
Either that, or maybe they got a transmission from the Prometheus when it was going down, like, or maybe Daniel sent a transmission or something, and it got back to Earth 10 years, or a couple years later.
You're talking about Elizabeth, not Daniel.
Or sorry, yeah, Shaw. Okay, so maybe Shaw sent something back.
But the thing is the Prometheus exploded on that planet. She's not on that She's not on the Prometheus though.
But I'm saying like maybe the captain sent an emergency transmission.
Well, she did send because at the end of the movie it does say that like that's the last lines of the movie.
Okay, so
is Elizabeth saying lines?
Maybe that reached Earth like some 2 years later,
probably,
and then they were like, oh shit.
So they start looking around and they get back. They find our very infamous area where the engineer headbutted Waylon. And we see a hologram of Shaw singing to herself, John Denver.
Yeah.
In a very
the control room's been like heavily overgrown in plants too.
Yes, because it's been in this cave for 10 years, so it doesn't take much.
It's an old ship.
So then we cut back over and we see Smokey Shoulder is having trouble breathing. He throws up blood on the captain's wife, and then he has some bad. Oh wait, never mind. So this is where now we're back, and then they call to the rest of the crew, "Hey, shit's going bad over here.
Yeah.
We're gonna bring him back to the ship." They get to the ship before the rest of the crew do. So the rest of the crew starts freaking out because they're hearing problems they're having on the other end.
Yeah.
So they start rushing back.
And then the other guy that's with them is
starting to get his
good.
stuff. Yeah. He's pretty much about like 3 minutes behind his stuff.
Yeah. Ledward was basically keeling over by the time they made it to the ship, and this other guy was like at the fainting point.
Yeah. So they get into the ship, and Ferris is like, "What the fuck's happening?" And they're like, "We need to get him in the medic bay as fast as we can." So she's like, so they get in the medic bay, they rip his shirt off, and he is not having a good time. I wrote,
Nope.
Smoking Soldier has bad shingles and pops pilot. Oh yeah, it pops onto pilot's Ferris. That's Ferris, Tennessee's wife. And so then she turns around and just goes, "Okay," and then closes the door and locks it and walks away. And
Yeah, so basically at this point, what bursts out of him, and when I looked it up on the wiki, and it's what's known as a blood burster. So it's not quite what we saw in AVP,
and it's not quite what we saw in Prometheus.
And it's not quite what we saw in Prometheus. So this one is essentially derived from those spores that went into these guys' bodies. And I guess it gestates in the bloodline or something, or in the veins, and turns into a creature that is very similar to a Xenomorph, which is known as a Neomorph. And so this thing bursts out of his back, and it's fully grown.
Yeah.
Well, not fully grown, but
I will
it's
say,
fully formed.
Let's rewind a little bit here. I will say this was the most horrifying thing we've seen so far. Because I wrote... Okay, first off, I'm going to tell you how bad my spelling was and how funny it auto-corrected. I wrote, this is what it says in my notes. SS has a seashell. And I was like, what's a seashell? He has a seizure. And so, but it's like so violently like compulsive. Mm-hmm. You're like, what the hell is happening here? And then all of a sudden it just explodes out of his spine, and this thing is just running around like a deranged cat. And what happens out of this point?
So essentially this little baby Neomorph, because it looks very similar to a Xenomorph, but it's all white, and it's not as biomechanical. It's more fleshy looking, and so this little thing basically jumps on Karen, Karen, the Cap's wife. So it jumps on her, starts attacking her. It's like basically gnawing her face off. And then, so Ferris runs in with a shotgun because she when she left, she went and got a gun.
Yeah, and then she comes back, opens the door because she doesn't know that this thing is running around.
Yeah,
she just goes, "All right, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna kill the smoking soldier, and I'm probably gonna kill her because blood's all over her."
Yeah, because she sees Ledward. She saw Ledward like breaking apart, so she was gonna just basically put him out of his misery. I think.
Yeah.
So she walks in, doesn't see this pile or this like puddle of blood on the floor and fucking slips, shoots the
It's
roof.
the most terrible, like,
oh my god,
bad
dude.
luck.
And then the Neomorph notices her, so then it like jumps at her. Corinne.
Yeah, because it's ripping apart on Karen's face.
Yeah,
like, it's just
she's
destroying
dead
her.
at this point.
Well,
or
she's
like,
not dead yet.
Or like basically near
Yeah,
death.
she's pretty close.
And then so Ferris gets up and crawl, or well, it doesn't quite get up. She kind of crawls through the door, like hits the button to close the door, but it shuts on her ankle. God,
Christ.
what are we watching? Three Stooges, maybe. Yeah, that's what it seemed like. And then she manages to get the door closed, and the Neomorph jumps up into the window and starts breaking through the window. Or whatever.
It doesn't take it long. It just
Yeah.
smashes its head against there and then just crawls out. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, well, that was useless.
So Ferris is trying to basically fend off. You know, she's got a shotgun. She's firing bullets and stuff. And as the Neomorph's jumping at her, she shoots like a tank of flammable liquid of some sort and fucking ignites that bitch. That ship goes up in flames.
That is the biggest explosion I think we've seen so far.
Yeah, and it was bad.
Just because it's so close. Like, we've seen, obviously, ships blow into one another.
Yeah.
But this was like, boom. It just... Because she just hits the fuel tanks and just blows up the whole ship. And so at this moment,
And
the
the
rest
little-
of the crew shows up.
Yeah, and the little Neomorph gets out too. Like
Yeah, the flame doesn't even bother
Yeah.
this thing.
Yeah.
And so as this happens, before that thing runs out, the rest of the crew shows up, and I wrote the most violent movie so far this season, because we get to see the most fucked up throwing up I have ever seen in a movie ever.
How do you turn my? I think my volume's too loud.
Oh, your
Yeah.
audio or your headphone?
Is it?
Your headphone is the box there. Yeah, that one. And I think it's that second one. Yep. So yeah, what happens is like we just see this thing. So as we know, there's another guy that has had this. He like ingested it into his nose.
Yes.
He pretty much like, I don't know, Tony Montana did this thing like
Yeah,
into his
yeah.
nostrils.
Yeah.
And it's now
That's
like
about right.
So what's happening is now he's like convulsing too. He's in his convulsing stage, and then he throws it up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my
It's like
god!
a throat burster.
I
or
go,
something.
this is the grossest thing I have seen so far. It just like it's just so gross,
Yeah,
and violently bloody that I'm like,
Just
wow, Ridley
spewed-
Scott didn't give two shits about how violent this movie was gonna be.
Yeah, like spewed out of his mouth. It was pretty disgusting.
And then I always referred it to as a xenomorph, but because I didn't know this other thing. So one of the little creatures goes after Daniels, and Walter jumps in front of it, and it takes his whole hand off by acid blood. It has acid spit, actually.
Yeah, acid spit.
Yeah, it
yep.
doesn't have acid. Well, it might have acid blood, but we don't know that. It has acid spit for sure, and it just burns off Walter's hand. This comes in handy later.
Yeah,
And we'll see that. We'll see that. So
and then when the crew showed up too, I just want to point out like the ship part. It was kind of messed up because the captain whose wife was on the ship, who's now
Yes.
dead.
this is Captain Chris.
Yes, he
His
runs
wife
up to
is on there
He runs up to the ship that's in flames, and he
because
sees-
everything's happening so freaking fast
yeah,
right now.
it's all just kind of going off at the same time. He looks at the ship, and Ferris comes stumbling out, just completely on fire.
Yeah, that's
because
right. I
she,
forgot
yeah,
about that.
Yeah, because she was in the cargo hold, and the door was down, and she just comes like stumbling out, and then just fucking falls into a little pile of ash, pretty much. Like she's just this burning carcass.
So
and
he's
it's like,
seeing this
dude.
all happen, and so
Yeah.
it's like he's just shocked. He's not doing
Yeah.
anything.
He's not even like, he's not even near the crew that's getting attacked. So like, because Daniels gets attacked and Walter saves her by getting his hand bit off.
Daniels went after the captain so that captain didn't go back into the ship. But as
Yes.
she's doing that, the xenomorph shows up and tries to get her, and then Walter comes in and blocks it and
Yeah.
takes his whole hand off.
And then the second one shows up in the grass,
And they're growing fast.
Yeah,
They are. I think they are honest. These things grow faster than xenomorphs. do.
Yeah, these things grow within like a matter of minutes. I think they like just grow super large. Like at this point, they're already like half the size of the people, and at first they were only like a couple.
Yeah,
maybe
they
a
were
foot
they were
long
like
or
the
something.
size of cats, and then they eventually, when they hatched out of the humans, and then by the end of this scene, they're the size of like mid-sized dogs.
Yeah, and so the other one starts attacking the group and mauls one dude to death, and then it attacks Rosenthal, who's this other girl that's part of the group. She's like this tall chick, and starts attacking
Literally
her.
the only other girl in this movie at this moment.
Yeah,
I guess there's
and
3 left, but
I
whatever.
forget who saves her. Somebody ends up shooting it. No, that's right. So this is when we get a big flare flies up into the air and
Yeah.
scares off because they end up killing one of the Neomorphs. They end up shooting. I think the one that attacked Walter ends up getting killed, and then the one that's attacking Rosenthal at that point in time, a flare gets shot into the sky, and it scares it off, and we see a figure in the distance who just says, "Come with me," and then
Yeah, I wrote hooded figure shoots
Yeah.
epic flare.
yeah.
They take it, and then so everyone goes, well, shit. What else are we gonna do? This guy just saved us. What are we gonna do? So they follow this hooded figure into this distant land, behind these temple walls, and we notice all these like statue people,
Yeah.
like all over the place, and they're all covered in like ash.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, this is a very Pompeii type of scene here. And no one asks a damn question about that.
Nope.
They just look at it and they keep walking.
They
I'm like, I don't know.
Follow him right on through.
All right. And so then the hooded figure takes off his hood, and who is this man?
It's a long-haired David.
Yes, it is, which is weird because that means these androids can grow hair?
Yeah, so wouldn't that make him more cyborg?
Yeah, I don't know what's happening here.
It is really strange because I mean, essentially,
Maybe they're like the Play-Doh guy, you know, when you got the haircut
yeah.
thing and you push down and the hair just goes
well, 'cause
like out.
I think it's funny how they eat and drink and basically do.
But
activities,
it doesn't
but they're,
really go anywhere.
Right.
It just
like disintegrates.
yeah, it
I
just
guess.
I don't know, it's
So-
just something.
Yeah, I guess they're designed to grow hair too, so that way they appear more human, I suppose. But yeah, essentially we get a long-haired David, and he starts asking some questions, and idiot Captain starts giving away everything immediately. He's like, "Oh yeah, we have a colony ship. We've got all these embryos. We're here. We stopped by not on this mission. We just decided to hang out, and this and that."
Yeah, and
basically
then Walter's
everything
just
that-
standing there going, or David's just standing there, and he's like, "Really?"
Yeah.
Like, like he wasn't expecting any of that, and he's like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, it's like, come on, man, what are you doing? Ugh.
So they find out because they're obviously looking at Walter in this situation too. They're like, "Well, hey, this is your brother here. You need to go deal with this
Yeah.
shit, figure out what he knows, and then come back to us and then let us know what's going on." So Walter and David leave, and they go off and.
Well,
No.
at first,
David leaves first. He goes
Yeah.
back to his little hiding spot.
Well, he goes up. He takes those two guys up first to test the
this is right.
communications.
This is right. Yes,
because
they're trying to test the
yeah,
radio communications
yes.
there.
And
But the
it's-
storm.
and it's raining and stuff, and the
Yeah.
guy's like, "How long do these storms usually last?" And he's like,
Actually, no. That's after. I have that written down afterwards.
Oh, I have it before that.
What happened here?
Because
Because I wrote payload. I wrote payload deployed,
um,
and Elizabeth, and then David has and then you can communicate
Payload.
through the. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, David.
oh no, that
Because I have that way before. I have
No,
like
that-
4
because
notes
that-
before
that
the
hap-
weather thing happens.
that happens when he's doing the Ozymandias poem, because
I think there's 2 different scenes that happen like this. I think there's
Yeah,
a
this-
communication scene before when Daniels is up there with them, and then they leave. Maybe I don't know.
no,
I can't
Daniels
remember
never
this.
goes up there. So
Not
it's-
until the end.
So it's the guy who knows the wheat, and,
Yes.
and some other dude, and then not Walter, but David. They go up to like part of the top of the ship or the building or wherever they're at, and it's pouring down rain.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Okay.
then
Let
he-
me
and he's like-
throw my stuff out here and let me see if that because I have that way before that thing happens. So David, or I'm sorry.
I
So
think-
they go up and they start talking. So David and Walter are talking to one another,
It happens.
and he does this like.
That happens afterward, though.
But look at my note. It has them way up here, and then the weather thing's down here.
No. What weather? Are you
Read my notes.
Are
Read
you
my
thinking
notes
of
because
the
I don't
same-
want to say it in
Are
the
you
thing.
thinking of the same weather thing that I'm thinking of?
See I don't know because I made the
Well,
weather
so-
reference after all of the other stuff happens. Because
What?
remember, they're not doing this at the same time.
I don't know what weather reference you're talking about. The only weather reference I'm
Okay, let
talking
me,
about is the communications storm.
yeah, where he says it's raining for weeks and whatever they could rain
Yeah.
for. Yeah, I have that. Can communicate through storm, but storm can last weeks and months. That happens after this scene. Okay, so because what? Okay, so this is what I have here. Again, I'm gonna be honest here. I haven't watched this in a couple days. This is the longest separation between movies to the podcast that I've had in a while. So what I have here is like David is off doing his own deal, and so Walter goes to try and like talk with him. They're just in a regular room, and he's like, "Hey, yeah, where did you come from?" and blah blah blah, and this and that. And he takes him up to the top, and he starts talking about like he recites something, which I think you were just saying.
No, okay, yeah, you're too far ahead.
Is that really?
Yeah, you're way too far ahead. So what happened? So David takes these two guys up to the thing, and they talk about the storm blocking communications. And then he's like, "How long these storms last?" And he's like, "Days, weeks, months." And then he goes back down into his little hidey hole or whatever. And then that's when Walter shows up, and they start playing the flute, and he's talking about like, essentially like.
No, now you're ahead of me again. That does
no,
you
because-
are right.
because
You are right,
the
but there is
Ozyman-
other stuff that happens before
The
this.
Ozymandias thing happens after after he takes Walter outside.
So that flashback, because the flashback
that happens while he's talking about the Ozymandias. He says the quote.
Why do I have this written down way before?
I don't know because
this is like this is literally scenes away from one another.
He starts saying the poem
Because this is where he talks about Elizabeth died.
He starts saying the poem, and he puts the thing on the grave, and then it goes to the
and then
flashback,
it talks about how he got his body back, and then I have
and then it goes to the flashback.
No. The flashback happens before that. So here's what I have: the flashback happens, right, and then it shows
happens in,
it
like,
shows
the middle of this
that
conversation.
we haven't even said what happened. So in the flashback, like it shows that David is the one that released all of these spores
Yeah.
and essentially sent a storm of all the liquid stuff that we saw in Prometheus, and is now. That is what turned these people into stone, essentially.
Yeah.
They don't say that. Like, David's not saying this to Walter. It's just showing us this information, which is so weird. No. I'm just saying this as a walkthrough. And I'm like, why? This is what I had a problem with. Why are we showing this and he's not saying it? Like, this is just information so that I know what's going on?
Well, no.
I just feel it was weird.
So the whole thing is he's talking to Walter. And Walter finds him in this cave, right? And he finds all the shit, like art and science and whatever, all over David's room. And then David's essentially talking to Walter about, like, he's playing the flute, and Walter's like...
Not yet.
No, this happens before they go outside, because he's talking about how...
I think there are two different times he talks to... I don't know why these are so out of order.
The second time he talks to Walter is later. He comes back.
Okay, I'm done arguing with it.
There's two different times, because Walter goes in one time. They talk about how David pities him because he can't create anything, because newer, updated models have essentially their curiosity and their artistic creation, all this stuff put in check because he was freaking out the humans. And then he teaches Walter how to play the flute real quick. Then he starts talking about Dr. Shaw, because he was saying that, oh, Dr. Shaw died here, blah, blah, blah. They walk outside. David lays the thing on the grave, starts quoting Ozymandias. Then it goes straight to the flashback where it shows David essentially releasing these vials, all the vials from that holdfast of the black goo. They're on the engineer's planet. He releases the black goo onto the engineers, and it fucking just decimates the entire crew. It cuts back to David and Walter in the present, where it shows Shaw's grave, and then Walter finishes the poem, and he's like, "Oh, it's by Shelley or whatever," and David's like, "Oh yes, like I know this poem." Or something, because that comes up a little bit later, and that's the second time when he comes back later. He's like, "Oh, who's that poem by?" And he's like, "Shelley," and he's like, "No, it's by so and so, by Frost or whoever it was by. I can't remember exactly." But because David was saying that he pitied Wayland at that point in time, because Walter was asking David like, "Oh, like what was the deal with Wayland at the end?" And that was before they walked outside initially. But David, at one point, before they go back, he says that he loved Shaw, and there's never been anybody like her. She treated him normal, and then like he'll never find her like again, essentially, and that he loved her. And then Walter's like, "But we don't know how to love," and he's like, I think he says like, "Oh, well then, yeah, like that's why I feel sorry for you," or whatever, because like you'll never understand, because that's when Walter says it's duty or whatever. He's like, "It wasn't love, it was duty. That's why I protected Daniels," because David's accusing Walter of loving Daniels like he loved Shaw, and then Walter's like, no, it's not love, it's duty. Yeah, because later on he will go back and they'll be back in that room again. There's like a scene that it's like almost immediately after that, because there's like a whole bunch of shit that happens.
Yeah,
That.
so I'm like quickly skimming through it here, and there are a whole bunch of different cuts and back and forth, and he does go to the radio thing, and then he mentions that, and then they do the flute thing, and then because I was wondering, as I was like looking at my notes, I'm like, why didn't I ever write where he cut his hair? Because eventually David cuts his hair to
later.
go back. No, it's literally at the moment Walter is walking in, he's cutting his hair. And so to look exactly like him, because when they go out,
right before
when they go out there, they both look the same, except one's barefoot and the other is in his obviously like rebel attire. And so I was like, when does that happen? I didn't write that down. So for some reason, my notes of like 4 or 5 bullet points got moved up, and the rest of this didn't happen. So, because like what I have here is the payload deployed in the crash. Elizabeth died in the crash. David has a body again because he mentions that like Shaw built the body again because I guess she's that nice. And then I wrote, can communicate through the storm. Shit. Okay.
So they
eventually do that.
Yes.
I didn't write the storm thing. Oh, wait, and then I wrote down storm can last weeks and months, that's what confuses me. Is I wrote that at the very end of that, and then David has one funny looking reflection. This is when he's cutting his hair. Yeah, so things got moved up on my bullet points, which kind of irritates me. Because then David and Walter have one-on-one where he keeps his flutes, and then David says, "I'll do the fingering." Yeah, and I was like, I don't know what that even is.
It's very sexualized when he's talking.
Yeah, it's so if David and Walter are getting tense, like sexual tension, is that considered like masturbating?
Yeah, that's the greatest question of all.
And then I said brilliant scene of one actor being 2 characters. I wrote that down too.
Yeah,
because I was like, I've never seen such best camera work like this at like with one person.
Yeah.
And then 5 crew members are dead because of the choice to land on this planet, because Chris is talking about how I made a stupid fucking mistake and it's my fault, and everyone's like, yeah, it kind of is your fault, but Daniels is not that kind of person. So she's like, it's not that bad of a thing. Like, you're still the captain and this and that. You need to lead us.
She's essentially trying to make him feel better.
Yeah, and then she's like, I'm going to go get Walter and we're going to leave. And so they're like, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. And then, okay, here we go. David then talks about, then it shows the flashback, which I don't understand.
No, this is way after the flashback.
Because I wrote David dropped all the jars on the city of engineers. The black goo then froze everybody. David dyed his hair to look like Walter. Elizabeth rebuilt David. Oh, I wrote the body thing in reference to, for me to go, why does he have a body now? And then they eventually did say that.
Yeah, he says that.
Which he does say that. Yes. Yeah. So this is that scene now. We're all caught up now.
Well, no. So when they're talking, like that's all already happened. Because at this point, when she's talking to the captain, Rosenthal, who's the girl's like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom and clean up, essentially, because she's fucking bleeding. Her arms are all trashed from the Neomorph. David and Walter are off doing whatever they're doing. So
so David. Yeah, he mentions he loves it, blah, blah, blah. Said that Walter loves Danny. I said albino xenomorph. Here we go. Albino xenomorph
the Neomorph
finds... he eventually is on the outside. He like does his little like perchful like looking around thing, and then he runs in, and then he followed the crew to the city. And then the albino morph, I don't know what it is again, finds the girl soldier, and then just takes a huge ass chunk out of her, like the biggest bite I've ever seen out of somebody. And then we get up into space again, and Danny McBride is sitting in the ship, And
Yeah, and they're attempting to go lower and lower because they still can't communicate through the storm. So they've already tried going lower to the point where the ship's at its threshold where it'll start breaking apart if it goes too far.
yeah, so the couple is like fighting Danny McBride, not like physically, just like this is a stupid idea for us to get closer and closer
Yeah.
to because there's a giant storm going on. It's just gonna rip the whole thing apart.
Yeah.
So,
Did you catch his quote?
what do you say?
Oh, okay. So when they're
I have a quote from him.
Oh, okay. I'm assuming it's probably the same one. Because they're arguing about it or whatever, and then the girl's like, that's not safe, and he's like, we didn't leave Earth to be safe.
I did have that down. That was
like,
the exact one.
And
I
it's
wrote
like,
down.
what? Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't even make any sense, dude. Come on.
You gotta sound heroic. So one of the crew members is like, all right, I'm gonna go look for what's her face. And literally, where's her face? Because it's floating in the freaking like fountain.
Yeah.
And
It bit her head off, basically.
Yeah.
And it's like feeding on her body.
yeah.
And this was Chris who went to go look
yes,
for her,
this is the
correct?
captain. This is the captain that's looking for her.
Yeah.
And then I said, bipedal albino xenomorph is terrifying, because once he stands up, he's tall
Yeah,
and
he's like
very skinny.
7 or 8 feet tall, I think.
It's very unsettling.
And before the captain discovers the girl, David finds the girl.
Yes. So David's the one that is in there right now. I did miss that. So David finds the girl first, the head floating around, and then starts trying to build trust with the alien. And then Captain Chris shows up and shows his gun, and he's like, and then David's like, "No, don't. I'm trying to build it." And I'm like, "Build trust with what? This thing is like," but it's like for some reason, allowing David to do what he's doing, which is weird. I don't know. There's something weird going on here. But yeah, David says the xenomorph trusted him because at this point the captain just unloads on this thing,
Yeah.
and just obliterates it. And David's not too happy about that
Yeah,
at
he
all.
freaks out.
And he's like, "Oh, what is this line from? I'm seriously going to fuck up your perfect Oh, yes. So he's like talking with David, and I think David mentions that he has like perfect composure or whatever, because he was trying to like lead it in.
Yeah.
And then the captain goes, "If you don't lead me to where like blah 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 where you've been doing or whatever," he goes, "I'm seriously going to fuck up your perfect composure." I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, it's a good line. I enjoyed that line. And then quick cut. We get a Tennessee breaks through the barrier because they do go a little bit lower because these are kind of happen simultaneously. And then essentially he gets through to Daniels, and they're all talking to her or whatever. And then he asks Daniels about his wife. They go on to a one-on-one conversation, and then Danny McBride's or Tennessee, he finds out that Ferris died in the ship. And essentially, you got sad Tennessee, and
Yeah,
that's about
Tennessee.
yeah, and then that's about that on that scene.
And then it turns out now we're back with Captain Chris and David are walking in, and they're in his like little laboratory.
Yeah,
And it turns out that David has been crossbreeding to build the perfect
a
being.
lot.
Yeah, he's been testing it
using
on
the black
things
goo.
and all sorts of stuff. And then he goes down into this basement area, and he's like, "But I've created what I believe is the perfect thing." And it's down in these combs. He has made eggs.
Yeah,
And now we have officially seen the xenomorph egg. And they're huge.
yeah,
They're like, I don't even remember them. In AVP, they were not even this big. Not even close.
yeah,
They were probably the size of maybe like a gallon of milk. And in Alien Covenant, they're about the size of like, I don't know, a 4 foot tall person. Like,
yeah.
I don't,
They're humongous.
I wrote, oh, here we go. Eggs are half the size of David, because when he's standing next to it, it's up to his like waist.
Yeah,
And then we get to see something for the first time.
yeah. So we see a facehugger burst out of an egg because the stupid captain he walks up.
This
and,
was actually kind of comedic.
and
a little bit.
he starts looking at it, and then David's like, "Oh, it's perfectly safe. Lean in and look," or something of that nature.
Yeah.
And then so the captain's like, "All right." So he sticks his face right into the egg practically.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, he's got a face hugger shoving its thing down his throat.
Yeah, I wrote out. Take a look. Oh yeah, he says take a look.
Yeah, it's quite safe.
About an hour and 21 minutes in, first face hugger takes the captain.
Yeah.
And this is the first face hugger we've seen since we've started the alien section.
Right.
Because the Cobra doesn't count. That doesn't count as one.
Oh no! Well,
that was an alien.
Well,
that
are
was
we
in
counting
Prometheus.
Are we counting AVP? At 1
I
and
mean,
2?
technically, but I mean, like I was saying on the back half.
Oh,
of the
okay,
season.
yeah.
This is the first time
as far
I've
as
seen
like
it.
the alien universe in and of itself. Yeah, this is technically, theoretically speaking, how the Xenomorphs.
Yeah,
came
the
to
AVP
be.
really ruins this whole timeline.
Yeah,
but hey,
it
you
like
know what?
retcons everything.
Or Prometheus and Alien Covenant retcon AVP.
Or that, yeah, that's what, yeah.
But yeah, and then we get a thing that Tennessee says, "I'm on my way," and he gets
Yeah.
into another pod, and I'm like, "Where the fuck was this thing when shit was going sideways?
Yeah.
Like, why were they not down there already? They clearly could make it the first time. Why are they doing this?"
Yeah,
anyway.
because Daniels, I think, at this point discovers Rosenthal's body and then freaks out and is like, runs outside and is like, dude, like, Tennessee, you got to get down here now. Like, people are dying. Like, there are more dead people. I don't know where the captain's at. Don't know where Walter and David are at. I don't know where the other crew members are at. Like, we need to go. And then so he gets into this like flatbed cargo ship thing that's not technically made for inner atmosphere.
Yeah, it's not. It's not the same as the first ship. This one's definitely more designed for like it's essentially a crane.
Yeah, it's supposed to be out in space. It doesn't go through the atmosphere, so they like retrofit it and like switch the rockets around on it a little bit and make it so it's okay to basically jet through the atmosphere real quick.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, he just drops off the ship and then goes down to go pick them up.
I also thought this part was a little funny. David starts throwing rocks at the captain.
Yeah, that
to
was
wake
pretty
him
funny.
up. And I go at an hour and 13 minutes in, which we're actually pretty on the point here.
Yeah.
We get to see a mini Xenomorph. This is now an official Xenomorph, though.
Yeah.
Like, this is now from the egg, fully processed, just like a Xenomorph should. What was weird was this is almost a mini Xenomorph, though. It wasn't like
it's not like a normal.
Yeah, it wasn't
chest
like
burster.
It was like just a miniaturized action figure size version of it. Then
David does this weird arm stretch out thing, and then the
Xenomorph
like,
copies
him.
it. I'm like, oh my
It's
God.
like it's so like allegorical of like a Jesus kind of thing, you know?
Yeah,
where
it's
he's
very
like
much. There's a
standing
lot
on
of
the
religious
with the light.
type of things implied here.
Yeah, a lot of symbolism.
And then so Daniels is going to search for anybody at this moment, mostly the captain, and she knows that she headed down towards this direction where she stumbles upon David's experiments and sees a body.
Yeah.
And it turns out it's Elizabeth Shaw's body.
Completely mutilated. Like,
yeah,
cut
because he
open
was
and taken
testing.
apart.
Yeah, he was testing on her. So that means she didn't die in the crash.
Right.
She died through what he did to her. And yeah, that's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
And
then this is where Walter goes back because David's playing his flute and he's playing the theme song from Prometheus.
Yes.
And then essentially they're kind of just chit-chatting back and forth, and then Walter says something that David doesn't like, and so David fucking runs the flute through his throat. And this scene out of the entire movie is the freakiest scene to me because of the way Walter looks when he goes like
when
he goes into this like stasis mode or whatever.
So before that though, there's a line that David does say to Walter because this is where you start to notice that David is fucking insane.
Yes.
Because he is just so broken where he thinks that like the humans are messed up and they don't deserve to live anymore. And he's like, they're imperfected, like they shouldn't exist anymore. They've had their time, and like, you know, all we were created just to make them feel better, kind of thing. And then David goes, they don't deserve to start again. Meaning like we fucked up Earth so bad that we don't deserve to go to another planet and just destroy it again.
Yeah,
because we'll probably just do that.
Which is essentially what this colonist ship was for.
And I wrote David kisses Walter, and I was like, that's masturbating.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
And then and then he just shoves the thing in his
Yeah.
neck, and then that's when and then pulls it out, and then that's when David's eyes roll back,
Yeah,
and then just like
the face,
shunks into himself.
yeah, because the face he makes, and then his whole body like contracts into this little ball, and he just drops to the ground.
It's essentially a
It's-
pressure point, and then it's like an off switch.
It's such a strange, jarring scene that
Yeah,
I
it
wasn't
happens really fast, yeah.
expecting. That like, and I mean, granted, obviously, I knew it was coming because I'd seen the movie before, but it's just that's the most uneasy scene to me. I think,
I
of the
wrote
entire
milk
film.
blood out the nose.
Yes, but then as David walks away, it zooms in on the hole on Walter's neck, and you see it start to close up.
I did not notice that. I was wondering what happens later. After.
Oh yeah. It slowly starts to close, and then it just cuts away from the scene. So
Got it.
that's about as much as you see of that.
So the two soldiers go off to go find the captain.
Yeah,
because
and
they're
these are
like,
the two guys that were up in the storm trying
yes,
to get
this
communication.
is I don't know who
Wheat
these
guy
people's really.
and black guy.
Yeah, I don't know what his buddy was,
Yeah,
his mate was.
No idea what.
Anyway, they go off to go find the captain. They stumble across the worst area that they could possibly go down. They
Yeah.
find the basement where the eggs are.
Yep.
And soldier gets a face hugger, plain and simple, right there. Button done did. And they try to shoot the thing.
Wait, what?
Wait, no.
No,
I don't know why do I have blood?
The face hugger it launches itself at the black dude.
Yes.
He swings his gun and hits it away, and it crawls up the hole that he came down because he finds the captain's body.
Yes.
He runs back up, and then the face hugger jumps onto Wheat Guy, but it doesn't quite lock onto his face because he's like holding it. But
it's constricted around his arm and his neck.
Yes.
At this point.
And then so the black dude goes to cut it off, and he cuts one of the little egg
Yes. Okay,
sacs,
that's where I have the
and,
A.
yeah, and then the blood
acid
spills on
blood
the dude's
burns
face.
Yeah.
And, like eats through his fucking cheek, but then they put this thing on it real quick that stops it from burning. So then his cheek doesn't like melt completely into his face, which is weird because you think it would keep going, but I guess it neutralized it somehow. I'm not really sure how that works. But then you see a fully grown Xenomorph drip its drool or whatever down onto one of the dudes, and then Wheat Guy gets up and runs out, and then the Xenomorph fucking jumps on the other guy and just
eats his head.
Yeah, fucking takes him out.
Here's the thing. I don't think I've ever seen a Xenomorph fully just eat someone's head.
Yeah,
have you ever seen that?
No.
I mean, so far I haven't. So I don't know if that actually happens again. Because the Xenomorph full on chomps the dude's head off,
Yeah.
like how the albino thing did. Anyway, we get to David, and
Yeah.
oh yes,
This is
okay.
when-
So David and Daniels are talking to one another
because she starts seeing his drawings. And
yeah,
stuff,
and
right?
so then David just full on enters the room and just like goes, "Oh, you know," and then just starts beating the
he's
shit
like,
out of her.
You've been a busy little bee.
Yeah, and then just starts throwing her all over the goddamn place. And then Daniels takes the nail and stabs it into him, but it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And then David kisses Daniels, which is weird. I'm like, wow, this is rapey. And then all of a sudden, this other being shows up and just grabs and then starts beating the crap out of him, and you're like, holy shit, it's Walter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I honestly forgot that happened.
Yeah,
And then-
so this is when
I have two
earlier-
lines here.
Oh, okay, yeah, because this is earlier when I was talking about that one upgrade line or whatever. But if you have the quote, you can.
Yeah. So, well, here.
Because I didn't write it down. So.
Oh, okay. So David says, "You're supposed to be dead," and then Walter goes, "There has been a few updates,"
Yeah.
and he says it in his like very human, like very stereotypical American accent. There have been a few updates, like kind of voice.
Yeah.
And then I wrote droid fight.
Yeah.
And then so
and it's a pretty decent fight,
Yeah.
for an alien film.
for a
I guess.
one-on-one same human fighting, like
Yeah.
it was kind of crazy how they did it.
Yeah.
And then so Daniels
And Wheat Guy.
and I wrote acid face.
Oh yeah, there you go. Now he's acid. Face.
are the only ones left.
Yep.
And Tennessee shows up. If anywhere close to seconds later, they could have all been dead.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they're like, all right, let's just run. And so they're running down this thing. And if Tennessee couldn't have parked any farther away, I was
Yeah.
like, why? You have a flying ship. Just a little closer would have been fine.
I do want to just backtrack just a second.
'Kay.
So in the fight with Walter and David, Walter pulls out a knife and starts slashing at David, and David ends up getting a hold of it at one point and slashes Walter's face, so he leaves a scar on his face, eventually the knife gets knocked into the ground or whatever. When we see them fighting, Walter's got the best of David. He's on top of David, holding him down, and he's got the knife in his hand ready to make the killing shot. But David is talking to Walter, and then that's when it cuts to Tennessee showing up. I forget what David was even talking about, but
I don't know.
but it just shows them talking real quick, and then it cuts to Tennessee getting there, and Daniels and security dude running out.
And then the Xenomorph isn't so far behind. It is running literally maybe 100 yards behind him.
Yeah.
It's not too far behind. And then what we presume to be Walter starts running down the steps.
I put obvious David as Walter. Obvious.
I mean, here's the thing, though. If you've never seen this movie, you wouldn't know.
The first,
you would not know.
The first time, I think, if you aren't meticulously paying attention, I think you wouldn't figure it out.
Because the thing is a lot of things add up to it could be Walter.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have a hand, because you're like, oh, that could be it, and then you
Right.
look down and you see he doesn't have a hand, and you're like,
yeah, and then it's
okay,
like,
maybe
oh,
it
but what
isn't,
about the
maybe it
scar on
isn't.
his face? But there's a scar.
and then
on
there's a
his
scar
face.
on his face, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh man. I
But
don't know
even
what
his
that-
hair is a different color.
That's what gets you.
Yeah.
That's the thing. They're like trying to go. You go physical, but you don't look at the other stuff that could be just
Right.
different. Anyway, so Walter shows up, asterisk mark.
Yeah.
And they get on the ship and they're flying away, but the Xenomorph hops on, and Danny goes out to take it out because she's apparently had enough.
Yeah.
And so
She's standing on top of this fucking ship flying around. She attaches a cable to herself, and she's got a
and
gun.
has a gun, yeah. And the Xenomorph is doing all its damn might to try and get into that ship.
Yeah.
It crawls on like a bug onto the front shield and just starts smashing its head in front of Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, if that's not the scariest thing I've ever
And I like the way he's just like, guys, I think I can see it.
Yeah.
It's right in front of me here. Oh, shit. Like he's freaking out.
And I wrote a Xenomorph crane game
Yeah.
because then for some reason the crane gets operated.
Oh,
Who's cr-
yeah. So
oh,
what-
she's controlling the crane.
Yeah, so what happens is the Xenomorph keeps crawling like underneath the ship, and she can't get a good shot. So she tells Tennessee to release the crane. He's like, no, it'll throw the ship all like off uneven or whatever. But she convinces him to do it. He releases the crane, and the crane like swings around and catches the Xenomorph. And he's like in the bucket, but it's not shut.
It's
And-
like caged him in.
Yeah, and so then as she's swinging back and forth on the ship, she's trying to shoot at it a little bit, and then eventually she ends up getting to where she can operate the crane, and she fucking just pulls it shut, closes the hand of the crane, and fucking just crushes the Xenomorph into pieces.
Yeah, I wrote Xenomorph gets squished.
Yeah. So at this point, Daniels, Tennessee, I put melt cheek. At
Yeah,
this point.
you get to see the see-through cheek because he rips off the adhesive, the little like I don't know what was on him, and then Walter puts the Band-Aid on him,
and then
and he's
Walter-
like, he says some snarky ass comment to him,
Yeah.
but at that moment, that comment immediately would throw a red flag to you
Yeah.
because he doesn't care about what the human is feeling. He's like, "Do you feel better now?" Like he
Right.
just or something along the lines of that.
Yeah.
And then he just walks away.
Yeah, because his mannerisms change a little bit, and then you kind of can pick it up because there's wait, what was that?
That was the microphone stand here.
Oh, okay. I thought there was like a bird.
Yeah, it flew in
Um,
here at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, it's like, but so you notice that Walter's kind of acting a little bit different.
Walter goes to tell Danny to come inside, and then they all get inside, and then they take off.
Yeah, and they end up making it back to the Covenant.
Yep. So then it cuts to green slime fixed cheek. They put these
Yes.
little green balls on his face.
That part was kind of gross.
I was like, "Ooh."
It looked like they were putting like
I was like, why would
like
you want
plaster
that on your
into
face?
his cheek.
Yeah, it did not look good.
Yeah, because the doctor that was on the ship was like, he's going to need reconstructive surgery, and I can't do that here because his cheek was essentially, there was a hole in it.
Yeah. So Walter is stapling himself,
Yeah.
and Danny walks in, or Daniels, not Danny Daniels, but Danny. Daniels. Daniels, the person, walks into and she sees him stapling himself, and she's like, "Oh, I'll help you." And I'm like, wow, this is weird. And so yeah, then that happens.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the crew is really dwindled down to literally like 5 people now.
Yeah, it's the 2 pilots with Tennessee,
and
then
Daniels
and
Walter.
And the ship, the melt sheet guy, and then the doctor. That this is like the only time we ever see the doctor. I think she was, because she wasn't part of the group that was down
everyone
on the planet.
that was on the planet. There was literally 3 people that survived.
Yeah. So this doctor that's part of the crew, I guess, has just been chilling on the ship the entire time.
Which makes sense. I'll
it's like
that.
the only time that you ever see her, really.
So Daniels is in her room and she's making eggs of some sort, I guess.
Yeah.
And she pours herself. She has scotch with her, and Tennessee walks in, and then she pours a glass for him, and then he says this line of, "Does this mean I have to call you captain now?" And she goes, "Fuck yes."
Yeah.
And I was like, "All right, there you go."
Yeah, because Daniels was 3rd in charge, technically speaking, until Chris became captain. Then she became like XO or whatever.
Yeah, she became what he was, and then now she's actually the captain.
And then we get up. Whap, whap, whap.
Yeah, as that was happening, I wrote chairs look like eyes. Do you remember that when they were like panning into the cockpit and everything's flashing and like there's just like it looks like eyes.
Oh,
It's
I
like,
didn't even
watch that
notice.
scene of when all the sirens start going off. There's like a shot of the cockpit and it's like panning upward, like towards the front of the ship. It's pretty kind of intense. And then you hear Mother saying unidentified life form on the ship.
Yeah.
And
then at first, like the very first time I saw this movie, I was like, what? Like that doesn't make any sense. But then it made sense to me after I watched it again. Because essentially, you're thinking like, wait, what could be on the ship? Like they killed the Xenomorph,
Yeah.
And then
but remember,
yeah.
What happened?
Well, yeah, because basically
I'm like, wait a minute, there's only one.
Well, yeah, because Daniels runs down the hallway and she goes to the med bay, and she notices that the doctor and Meltface are both dead because that facehugger that jumped onto Meltface managed to impregnate him.
Got it.
Even though
I didn't get that.
In that 1 minute of time that he was stuck on his face.
So even when he had it choked off,
Yes.
it somehow slipped down the back of his throat.
Exactly. And so a
Interesting
Xenomorph
thing.
burst out of him by the time that they were like repairing his cheek or whatever. And
That's right. It does look like a scene from Dead Space in that thing.
Yeah. So
and then
the
we get
doctor
to
and
see
her
we get to
and
see
him
some
are
love
dead.
in the shower too. Some
Yeah.
nice interracial going on there.
Yeah, so and so you see that Jussie Smollett and his captain and his pilot wife or whatever, they're having sex in the shower, and this is like the
Now,
only.
do we know that for a fact, or was it all staged?
Oh yeah, who knows? I mean, yeah, it could have been.
Were there 2 white men with "Make America Great Again"?
Yeah, it was probably a white guy in that costume.
Yeah.
Wait, no, never mind. The Xenomorph is CGI,
I
so
was like,
it's
wait a
probably
minute.
programmed by white guys. But
Do we have video evidence of this? Because it might say otherwise.
Man, shit, man. But
He knew what he was getting himself into.
yeah.
Anyway,
This is the only time you see boobs in the entire movie as well.
and they're dead.
Yeah, just
They're
like
dead
yeah.
tits.
Yep.
But then but and we do see some butt.
Yeah, I was gonna say we see some butt.
We do get to see a mouth burst for the first time.
Yeah, which is really cool because
The mouth mandible.
yeah, because essentially it's really weird what happens. So it's like the girl and him are making out, right, and they're facing each other, and then you see the Xenomorph's tail creep between their legs and like up in between the girl's
Yeah,
legs.
it doesn't show where it went.
Yeah.
But I'm like, what was she thinking? Because
Right.
it's obviously touching her. So I'm like,
and
wait,
it's-
you think his leg is like wrapping around you right
Yeah.
now?
Well, and it was like I was
Like it's supposed to insert into
It
her?
reminded me of a Japanese hentai.
I was
dude.
what?
Like because it
I
was
was-
basically an octopus tentacle getting ready to go. in
Yeah,
some
it was
chick.
like where
Yeah.
when because it goes up pretty far
yeah.
and then she jumps back and I'm
Right.
like, what did you think that
Yeah.
was?
And
like
then- and
how
then
it
she-
got that far?
And it's really funny because then she looks down and it just kind of goes
Yeah.
underneath the shower curtain looking thing. It just slithers out and it's just like, what the hell?
It comes back underneath the shower thing and you
Yeah.
see the Xenomorph and then she goes ah! And then
Yep.
the Xenomorph just pops its thing right through the glass and through the dude's head.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn, he
Yep.
fucking got lit up.
And then you hear the girl scream, but her death happens off screen, I believe.
Yeah, so I wrote it out. But so a little bit down, Tennessee and Daniels find out that yes, they're dead.
Yeah, they just essentially find the bodies, and then they're like, "Shit, we got to do something."
But we get to see for the first time
Yes.
ever, an hour and 46 minutes in, Xenomorph vision.
Yeah, I put, "Whoa, alien vision, weird."
Yes, and I was like, this is the first time in the
Yeah.
whole series that we've seen this so far.
Yeah.
We've made it 8 movies. We've seen Predator vision. This is the first time we've seen Xeno vision.
Yeah, and it's really not that impressive.
No, it looks like a bug.
Yeah.
It looks like he's looking through like a bug.
Yep.
Like he has hexagonic eyes. But that's what's interesting though, because you don't see the eyes.
Right.
So that means the shell is containing their eyes.
Correct. Yeah.
But we don't see those. We've not seen those yet.
Yeah, and the xenomorph that you see on the ship, when they're down on the planet still, when it jumps in front of Tennessee, has like,
So the one that is on the planet.
yeah, it
The one that gets crushed in the crane.
yeah, it has this weird, like, you can kind of see like a skull, like behind the plating of its face. It's really weird.
Interesting.
Like
I didn't
you can
notice
see
that
it. You can see it in the screenshots of the movie if you look online.
The one that's literally the cover of the movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I wrote down because they're closing doors to kind of contain it.
Yeah.
I wrote Xenomorph moves like a cat. Door closes on it, and it starts to like does that like weird cat turn. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's kind of like pacing back and forth, like what the fuck, you know? And they're essentially leading it down certain corridors through the ship, so that way they can contain it in the cargo bay. I think is where they're heading.
Yeah. So they head down. They finally track it down to the cargo bay. Walter is in a different area,
Right.
and he's the one that's closing all these doors down. They get down there, and they're in the big Tonka truck.
And the funny thing is while Walter's watching this, the entire time he has more of an inquisitive look on his face.
He gets a smirk every so often, and then
Yeah.
it goes away.
Yeah,
And then he gets, and then he's legitimately helping them.
Yeah, but he looks more interested and a lot more like, oh, this is kind of like an interesting experiment.
Yeah,
like the
what
way
is going to happen here? Will the
Yeah.
humans conquer this thing? And so Tennessee and Daniels head down to the cargo bay to head down to the big Tonka truck, and they get in that. And so the plan is to lead it in, get in the big Tonka truck, close the door, trap it in there, and then send that thing through space.
Yes.
That's the plan. So it gets in there, and they get it all. They're like, "Are you ready?" And they're like, "Yes." So then they go, "Walter, release the door." Doors open. Xenomorph walks in bipedally, which is weird.
Yeah,
and then
that was strange.
and then goes into its cat form and then starts running all over the goddamn place. It goes into the big Tonka truck.
Mhm.
Daniel says, "I got you, you son of a bitch," and then closes the door. And they're like, "Release it." And so Tennessee releases it, but then the chain gets stuck because
Yeah.
and
it like pulls another vehicle with it, and the vehicle gets like caught on something, and then essentially it doesn't go anywhere.
yeah, because they've now opened up the bay door.
Yeah.
So now I was like, "Oh, xenomorphs don't need to breathe in space, apparently." So that's the thing, because it's just moving around.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's essentially breathing in this vacuum, and so now they're like, "Oh shit!" Like this thing's stuck in here. And then at this point, the xenomorph is just like crushing its head against the window.
Yeah.
And I wrote, "Xenomorphs don't need air."
And it does eventually break out, right?
Yes,
I
because
didn't
because
write
then
down,
it
like,
starts to chase
anything
off.
from the fight.
Yeah, so then Daniels is like down on the bottom part of it and runs around and is leading it to like come between her and the Tonka truck.
Oh,
and
that's
then
right.
Tennessee releases the Tonka truck because they eventually get it unstuck, or she does this. I don't know who does this.
No, yeah, you're right. Like Tennessee gets the vehicle unstuck, and she's standing in front of it, in front of the like open space, and
Yeah.
then the truck's behind her, and then the xenomorph jumps in between her and the truck, and as it's getting ready to run and attack her, that's when Tennessee releases the truck.
Yes, and then she like it almost looks like she got taken with it, but the Tonka truck impales the xenomorph, like impales it and
Yeah.
sends it off.
There's like a
And-
little scoop on the front of it, like
yeah,
a
and so it
bulldozer
just
looking
stabs
scoop
it.
kind of thing.
And then they get sent off into space, and then Tennessee runs up and goes like, Daniels, and then she like is like terrified and crying, like misty
Yeah,
eyed,
just
and
kind
I'm
of
like,
pops her head up out of this little hole.
yeah, I think she was a good actress in this movie.
Yeah.
I think she was pretty good.
Mhm.
Not like Ripley level.
Oh,
but
no
she's
way.
pretty close. Like
Yeah.
she's at the bottom. She's a second.
She's definitely more
Guaranteed second.
competent than Shaw and Vickers. I can say that.
Yes,
much for
I
sure.
would say that. Yes, she's more resourceful. I'll give
Yeah,
her that.
yeah.
So Tennessee goes, "Oh hey, Daniels, you son of a bitch." No,
Yeah.
he doesn't
Yeah.
say that, but yeah. So eventually they get up, and then they
Nice going, sugar tits.
what is it? What sweet
Or
dick
sweet,
or what?
sweet tits and sugar
Sweet
dick.
dick.
That's right.
Yeah, there you go. Sugar dick. Anyway, so yeah, Tennessee goes, "Hey, yeah, you're great, blah blah blah." And so then they're all like, "Okay, cool, everything's back to normal,
Yes.
as it should be." Walter puts them back all in the pods. They're like, "Hey,
and
we're
then
going to
and-
sleep now."
Yeah, Tennessee's passed out and
Yeah.
he's already in his
We'll
pod.
see. Sweet dreams, sweet prince.
Yeah. And he looks really funny in that skin tight suit since Danny McBride's kind of a bigger dude. Like
And now there's only 2 crew members now.
Yeah.
There's only literally 2 pods being used at this moment.
Yes.
And so Daniels is like, "All right, time to get in my pod." So she gets in her pod. She's talking with Walter and blah 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 and this and that, and talking about how like, yeah, when we get down there, you're gonna still
Yeah,
help me build
and he's
my.
already shut the pod at this point.
It's closing as this
Oh,
moment
okay,
as she states this of like, you're still gonna help me out building the cabin, right? Because he's answered all the questions correctly until she starts
Yes.
talking about the cabin, and then it closes and then it's just silent.
Yeah, and
he doesn't respond because he's
gets
like,
that
"Oh
look like-
shit, she knows now."
Yeah, he's got that look like, oh, you fucking caught me.
Yeah,
Like-
pretty much.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's I wrote down, "Will you help me build my cabin?" And then Walter doesn't respond, and then it turns out she goes, "David,
Yeah.
David!"
Knock, 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 knock,
Yeah,
knock,
she's
knock,
like
knock.
banging because she's now being like suffocated.
Yeah.
Or no, she doesn't get
Or-
suffocated.
yeah, he just puts her to sleep.
Yeah, because
but
he
it's-
needs her.
Yeah, it's knocking her out. It's like the knockout gas, essentially.
Yeah, so she's because her heart rate is going up, and then
Right,
eventually
right.
she goes to sleep, and it just goes back to normal, and then she goes. This is one of my favorite, if not my favorite line of the whole goddamn movie. David goes, "Don't let the bed bugs bite." And I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, wow."
And it's like so sinister the way he says it.
I was like, "That is great. That is a really good one." And then David goes into the embryo lab,
Mhm.
and then he starts hawking up.
Yeah. And then like an egg pops out of his mouth.
Yeah, he has a frozen embryo of a xenomorph, and he puts it down.
Yeah.
And they're very small.
Yeah.
They're very, very tiny. They're like little crabs.
Yeah.
Because they're not anywhere near
it
the
kinda
size of
look-
those eggs.
Yeah, it kind of looked like somebody put like a little scorpion in like a glass
Yeah, it looks like one of
bubble.
those little Mexican candies that like
Yeah,
they put the
exactly.
little. Yeah, it looks like that. And then David sends off one final message as Walter, and that's the end.
Yeah, and essentially he says that all the crew members died in the solar flare, and the only 2 crew members are left. They're back in their pods, and they're heading towards Origai 6.
Yeah, so pretty much not even saying that they went to the other planet.
Yeah, he just cut it all out and acted as Walter.
Yep. So
And then that's
that
where the
is
movie
that.
ends.
That is that. All right. But now we head into, I thought we'd do something a little bit different. I thought we could probably switch off on this. I normally am the one reading on all this stuff. Maybe give you a little chance here, so you can read some of your stuff. Some of the go through here.
Like the trivia and all that?
Yeah. So do you want to go first, or you want me to go to first, and then we'll alternate? I don't know if that's going to work out, but we can do it.
What do we do first?
So the
Trivia?
first thing is trivia. Do you want to do
Okay,
trivia?
Yeah, I can read some trivia.
All right, let's do trivia. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is where we call the IMDb corner, where we head over to IMDb's web app, and we just search through some of the cool stuff that's listed in the information. So we're going to go through the trivia. Josh is going to read off some of these things and see what some fun, cool stuff that was in the movie that you may or may not know that exists. So let's
and I'm gonna
get us to us. What are we going at here?
I'm gonna go by the most interesting trivia.
Most interesting trivia. Are you going up or down? Going down, I'm assuming.
Man, they're all pretty long.
Because that's the reason why I usually read 5.
Yeah. So
I think you can do that one. I think you're good.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just start from the top. And I'll just read.
Are you doing in the novelization?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool.
So okay.
Number 1.
Yeah. Warning. Spoilers. Haha.
Yeah, we just spoiled the whole movie there.
In the novelization of Alien Covenant, David shows Orem a fossilized ovomorph, which I'm assuming is the egg.
And Orem is Chris, by the way.
Oh, okay. And the dead facehugger within, pointing out that they are an engineer creation, engineered long before he arrived on the planet. David goes on to express a desire to play God, stating that the wish is to create a similarly perfect life form himself, apparently inspired by engineers' past experiments that created the first xenomorphs. This in a strong contradiction to the film, which instead implies David is the originator of the xenomorph species and creating them without any references from engineers' past experiments.
Interesting. So in the book, it says that the engineers are the one that made the eggs, and David's just trying to recreate that.
Yeah, that's
but in the
really
movie, it
interesting.
implies that David is the one that made them.
Oh,
So,
weird.
there you go.
Huh.
Number 2.
When Daniel traps the xenomorph in the truck on the terraforming bay, she says, "I got you, you son of a bitch." This is what Ripley says near the end of the first Alien after she blows up the Nostromo. Oh,
Wow.
should I?
No, we're going
Well,
to move on.
I guess I already spoiled
No,
it.
you just said blows up something. That's it. That's all.
Oh,
That's all we're
okay.
doing.
Yeah, we'll just stop there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realize that was the first. Let me
It does say spoiler.
Well, I thought it was talking about this
No,
one.
I know.
Okay,
I'm not going to blame you on
we're
that.
going to skip the next one.
Okay.
Okay.
Number 3.
So the glimpse we get of Shaw's corpse with bony growth blending with her head recalls several of H.R. Giger's paintings that focused on female faces, particularly L.I.L.
Yeah, I don't know what
I don't.
that is.
Lee I maybe.
Lee.
I don't know who that
E?
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be. Maybe it's an Asian name or something. Lee E.
But
who could-
H.R. Giger is the guy who created the xenomorphs, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, he's the designer.
All the
of-
xenomorphs and most of the designs are based off of his artwork if he didn't create them himself. Because I think he died in like the early 2000s, so I think everything like post AVP is all like other people's drawing based off of his inspiration.
Number 4.
Ridley Scott originally considered the derelict ship in Alien to have been a type of bomber. Prometheus then suggested that to have been the purpose with the engineer's ships. Covenant has now fully presented this ship carrying out that very function by David on the engineer's homeworld. Okay, so essentially those were
The big
bombs.
donut
Yeah.
spaceship was a bomber.
Yeah.
Which
and then
which is kind of implied because you're like,
It makes
why do they
sense.
have all of this stuff on here? What are they ever going to do?
Yeah.
That's because they were going to do that.
and those are the bombs.
And number 5.
And then the tagline itself is a direct reference to the Divine Comedy, which we'll get to the taglines here pretty soon. So
Yep.
I know that's your favorite part.
Well, actually, I won't get to do it because
Oh,
unless you
my-
want to take loot box.
Oh well, do you want to do the taglines?
Okay.
Yeah, because I was like, I know you like the taglines. So
All right.
yeah.
This is we're moving on to loot box. This is where we go in and we find this is a random one. So we either can do what are you going to choose today?
Let's
are you
do
going to do
soundtrack.
We're going to do soundtracks,
Yeah,
all
because
right?
there's Goose crazy credits and soundtrack. I don't think we've ever done soundtrack.
I don't think we have either. Okay. I don't really know what you want to do here.
Oh well. I mean, I don't know. I just hit soundtrack credits, and it basically just kind of has some lists of like what the songs are that are in it, and
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
oh, okay, yeah. So basically, you got the Alien theme from the original Alien, which will be the sneak tease. Oh, which one's our next movie?
Yeah.
Stay tuned and find out.
Yeah.
And then that's by Jerry Goldsmith. And then we have a song in there. Oh, well, this
This is the entrance to the gods into Valhalla, which
Yes.
is stated.
yeah, Das Rheingold.
Yeah, which is David is playing this.
Yeah, so at the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie, David's playing the song on piano in front of Peter, and then at the end of the movie, when he's basically getting ready to spit up the eggs, he asks Mother to play this song for him, and it's essentially it's the one of those old school like classical musics.
Number
there's
3.
"Take Me Home, Country Roads" by John Denver.
Yeah.
Written by John Denver, Taffy Nevert as Taffy Danoff. I don't know who that is, and Bill Danoff. I guess that was his wife at one point. Yeah, just old school musicians. The Man Who Broke the Bank at Monte Carlo, written by Fred Gilbert. I'm not sure which song that is, but I'm sure it's in there somewhere. You got Ancient Flute by Harry Gregson Williams, and I'm guessing that's probably the flute song, like either the song that he was teaching Walter or it's the Prometheus theme played on the flute is what I'm guessing. The next one is Life and We Were Right, composed by Harry Gregson Williams, which is probably just another song from the score. Let Me Down Easy, written by Paolo Nutini, Roland Rollo Armstrong, and James McDougall, and I guess Rechia Holloway. I don't really know how to say her name. I don't know if that's a band or here. Let me look at Paul something. No, it doesn't really say anything about him. I'm just guessing that's probably a band, and they probably paid some music. And then the Das Rheingold thing is on there twice.
Yeah, because it gets performed and
Yeah,
then also not performed.
Yeah, so it must be like going in the order that you hear the songs in the movie.
Yeah.
All right, well that's pretty much it. That's the music that was in there. So, Wagner, that's who the Das Rheingold is by.
All right, now we head over to my favorite is taglines. This is the taglines that are used to
Oh my God.
promote the movie, and these are god awful.
Dude, oh my God.
These suck. Here, starting at number 1, Run.
Terrible.
Number 2, The Path to Paradise Begins in Hell.
And I'm curious if that is the one that's the
main one?
That's the one that I was talking about just a
Oh,
second
okay.
ago. Yeah, Paradise Lost or whatever.
Yes. Number 2, Hide. Sorry, this is number 3, Hide. Number 4, Scream. Number 5, Pray.
Number 6, Love.
Yeah, no.
Number 7, Eat.
Number 6 is Discover the Origin of Terror. And number 7 is The Beginning of a Nightmare.
These are terrible.
And number 8, Witness the Creation of Fear.
Yeah, The Path to Paradise Begins in Hell is like the only good one out of that entire group.
No, it's pretty good. All right. So I just realized we never mention who actually directs these movies.
Oh, good call.
So obviously Ridley Scott is the director of this movie. And that's pretty much the director here. I could list off the others if you really want me to. I'm gonna have to. I have to search here. Okay, from now on we'll do that. From now on,
at this point, I think we're already
we're deep into it. We're deep into it.
Just if you guys are we're still figuring this out. This is our first season, so this is still kind of a little bit of a rough draft for how we're laying out the.
Yeah, and by the way, if you guys have
stuff,
suggestions, feel free to comment too.
So we can put that into the mix now. You know, maybe we should write down what we want to look about on certain things like that for the next season. You're getting a little behind the scenes preview there of us talking about it.
Release date was May 19th, 2017. May 19th, huh? May 19th. That was a big deal for a movie called See No Evil that Kane was in. I don't know if you remember that.
No.
Kane's in a movie called See No Evil.
No.
And they kept making a big deal about May 19th was some sort of thing. And then it turns out that was just the release of See No Evil. It was a whole big shoot. Anyway, so yeah, that's the thing. Let's check out the box office. What do we got for box office? This is a year ago now.
So
get these next two.
Budget was $97 million estimated.
That's a nice round number.
Yeah,
they're not the nice weird numbers.
Yeah,
here.
they're we don't want to figure out the budget. Opening weekend, it got $36,160,621 US.
I guess that's okay because that's a third of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was okay
for opening weekend.
That's
opening weekend.
Yeah, that's not bad for an opening weekend.
Did make its money back though.
And then gross worldwide, it took $240,891,763. So it made its budget back and then some, about 1.5 times. But yeah, it didn't do so well here in the U.S.
All right, now we're moving on to tech specs. You know what, Josh? You can go ahead and run tech specs.
Okay.
Pick whatever you want. Just read off whatever you like. I don't read everything here, so whatever you feel like. Stands out to you.
Okay, so runtime, this is interesting. So 2 hours and 2 minutes, 122 minutes. But in China, mainland China, and mainland China, it was 115 minutes, 1 hour and 55 minutes, because it was a censored version.
Interesting.
So
I want to know the difference.
Yeah, I'm curious what they censored. I wonder if it was some violence, or maybe it was the sex scene, or
the convulsion.
Yeah,
that's pretty violent.
Yeah, I'm curious. All right, and then looks like. So aspect ratio is 1.90 to 1 IMAX version select screens. I guess the typical version is 2.39 to 1. Camera, we got I love it. This is my favorite part when you do the tech specs. I love how just ridiculous some of these names sound.
Yeah, good luck with these ones.
Camera, Ari Alexa Mini, Ingenu Optico DP Rouge, Panavision PCZ, and Vintage lenses.
Nice.
God, that sounds so ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, they're French, so
yeah. And then
except the Panavision one.
And then it looks like there's another one, Ari Alexa XT, everything else is the same.
Yeah.
So it looks like it's just basically a mini and a large version of the same camera.
Yeah.
And then laboratory, I'm guessing that's the
Where the film was developed.
oh, gotcha. Okay, so we got Company 3 for the digital intermediate and Fluent Image for London, UK. I'm guessing they kind of finished it off. And then we'll just say the film format. Sorry. What did I say?
I don't know. I don't know what you're reading now.
I think I said film.
Forfat.
Yeah, I said something weird there. I don't even know what I just said. D Cinema. That was the film format, printed film format. And
Yeah.
I think we'll probably call that good on because I don't.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Now we head into the ranking. This is where we rank the movie. I have to figure out what I gave this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll accept that. All right. This is where we go to the rankings as just a little bit of a brief recap on it. I think I may have said that I wasn't going to run through this every single episode, but I'm just going to remind you just in case.
Yeah, you have them in order. So.
Yeah. Well, of just what the rating system means.
Gotcha.
We'll get into what it actually is in a moment. So a 10 is a groundbreaking. A 9 to 9.9 is a must-have. An 8 to 8.9 is marvelous. 7 to 7.9 is worthy. A 6 to 6.9 is a borrow. A 5 to 5.9 is meh. A 4 to 4.9 is mediocre. A 3 to 3.9 is terrible. A 2 to 2.9 is horrific. A 1 to 1.9 is unplayable or unwatchable. And a 0 to 0.9 is trash. So, I guess I'll kick this off since technically it's my turn. So the thing about this film is I think it's definitely better than Prometheus. Just because we actually get to see xenomorphs. We actually get to see 3 different versions of what a alien looks like. And then we actually get to see the full-on xenomorph. I will say this kind of hurts more Prometheus than Alien Covenant because we never see what came out of the thing that was out of the engineer because it's on a different planet.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't even know where that planet's at in correlation to this planet. I thought the acting was pretty top. It was pretty nice, pretty good. There were some kind of loose ends here and there, but the red shirts are red shirts.
Yeah.
As opposed to the main people, they actually did a pretty good job. I thought there was the main lead. I thought she was really good.
Yeah.
I thought Michael Fassbender did a phenomenal job in this movie as 2 different characters and played them pretty well. Like in order to keep them separated. I thought it was pretty like enticing and controlling, and also I liked Danny McBride did a pretty good job. I always like seeing actors like break out of their shell to become their own thing. There was a little bit of comedy, but like he didn't fall back on that. He did add a little bit of emotion, and I think that he may have called for that. I think that either Ridley Scott or Danny McBride definitely pulled out something where they're like, "Hey, I need you to bring some emotion to this scene." And I think he did a pretty good job. He without going like blubbering idiot.
Right.
Because sometimes if you do that, an actor could probably give you a stupid
like when he finds out his wife's dead.
Yeah, and he could give you a stupid take, and you're like, oh well, that's not good. But I thought he did a pretty good job. I thought he added emotion to it. I thought it was pretty good. So with that, I thought the story was also pretty decent. Because it's just mainly an alien movie. It's mainly supposed to just tell you about how the aliens kind of came into the thing. I will say this movie definitely feels like half a movie because if you didn't see Prometheus, this movie could honestly not make a lick of shit.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. Like why if you didn't know who David was, I could see this movie not really being a big deal to you.
Right.
And I don't really know anyone that didn't see Prometheus before they saw this movie. Because usually anyone that saw this movie saw Prometheus first. With that said, I did see this. This is one of those movies I have already seen before, but I'm not going to dock points for that. With all said and done, I gave it a 7, which on our scale is worthy. I think it's worthy of owning. I think it's a lot better in the sense of if you owned it, you could pop it in once or twice. I think if you want to see something that's like kind of fucked up in some scenes in a good way of like, dude, whoa, that's a little much. This movie brings it and they don't shy away from it. I think this is definitely a Ridley Scott version of a movie where maybe he tried to do that with Prometheus, but they wouldn't let him do it. and they're like, "Hey, I did it your way, and no one likes this movie that much. I'm gonna do it better, and I'm gonna bring more violence in this one." And I think he brought it, and it definitely shows a lot more. Like I said, it's the most messed up throwing up scene I've ever seen. It's the most like grossest, like shingles popping, spine exploding, like cat creature pops out of this guy. That's pretty messed up. Like explosions of people just dying in fire. That's pretty messed up. But I think it's not an 8. It's definitely not an 8. But I think it's worthy of owning. Anyway, 7. There we go. That's my score. What about you, Josh?
So okay, it's kind of funny. So it's kind of good that you went first on this one because I don't think I rated this as fondly as you did.
That's fine. That's what the averages are for.
See, yeah, I liked. Okay, so don't get me wrong. I like the movie. I think it's fairly fun as far as the movie goes, but my problems lie mostly with, I guess, kind of what you were saying, where if you haven't seen Prometheus, this movie makes no sense. So it's already got that kind of going against it. And then number 2, the amount of stupid decisions that characters make in the movie, like it doesn't make any sense. Like when they go on the planet without suits, Ferris slipping and falling with the shotgun on the blood, and that whole scene basically being like a slapstick comedy scene. The idea that Tennessee says we didn't leave Earth to be safe. You know, it's little things like that that really distract me from this movie.
Okay.
And so overall, like the story itself, I get and I understand where it's going. It's a little bit more like, oh, robot with daddy issues to me than anything, but like I like the fact that we get to see the Xenomorphs. The CGI is really great. It's just, and some of the character development's really good. Michael Fassbender again, fantastic, playing 2 characters this time. Daniels was pretty good. The guy who played Chris was all right. And then of course Tennessee, you know, Danny McBride's always great in whatever he's in. And like you were saying too, he wasn't so typecast in this. But overall, I personally did not like this one better than Prometheus.
Okay.
And I thought Prometheus was like I like the ideas behind Prometheus a little bit better, and I feel like with this one, Ridley Scott really backtracked because everybody was so mad that they didn't see an alien in Prometheus. He was like, well, shit, now I got to put an alien in this movie, because the original plan for Prometheus was it was going to have nothing to even do with the Xenomorphs, and it was only going to be all about the engineers and Shaw and David having to do with all that. And then Ridley Scott, I guess, apparently backtracked because of all the backlash, and so he put a Xenomorph into the movie. And so that kind of hurts it for me too, just knowing that he kind of gave in to demand rather than writing something that he truly wanted to write.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, I would still watch the movie if it came on. But to me, this one was just a meh, and I gave it a 5.
A 5, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, it's a little bit of a separation on the average there.
Yeah, no doubt, huh?
Okay, well, so to get the average, we take our 7, we add it with our 5, and then we divide it by 2, which gives us a 6. And so that is a solid 6, which Prometheus got.
Oh, the irony.
So we have a tie for the first time ever in our MovieKombat season. So now it goes Predator is number 1 with an 8.5. Predators with a 7. Predator 2 with a 6.5. And then with a tied 6th place. Now remember, with ties, it goes down a rank. So now tied with 5th place, because that's how ties work, is Prometheus and Alien Covenant, and then rounding into 6th place is AVP, and then in 7th place is The Predator, and in 8th place AVPR. And those are your Those are your rankings so far.
Nice.
So now that's interesting. I didn't think we were gonna get a tie. I don't know why I thought that, but that's gonna be it for our. We did the walkthrough. We did our trivia. We did our loot box. We did our taglines. We did our release date, a box office, tech specs, and now we're ranking a solid 6 for Primal Target as our average. And that is the final score for that. Okay, so here's the other thing. I think there might be people that jumped in here about halfway through the season. So I want to specify the reason why our scale has points in it, but we're only rating on solid numbers, is because IMDb doesn't allow us to put points, a decimal system in there, and that's how we keep track. But yeah, so there you go. A solid 6 from Alien Covenant. But next week we are watching. What are we watching, Josh?
So we are watching the original 1979 Alien by Ridley Scott.
I'm gonna let you know, everybody. This is the first time I've ever gonna watch Alien all the way through. Oh my god!
And it's such a good movie.
Yeah, because I've seen it on TV, like here and there. You know how you jump in it and you're like, oh, it's on, and then you leave. And then you're like, oh, well, because I left for commercial break, and then you come back like an hour later. Yeah, so this is the first time I'm actually going to be like watching Alien for the first time all the way through. And then through the rest of the season, too. This is going to be like new movies to me. I've never even seen Alien 2.
Oh, my God,
I've never seen Alien 3.
Oh, dude, Aliens is so good.
And I've never seen Alien 4, whatever they call that,
Alien
Resurrection. Alien Erection. I've never seen that movie either. You think there's a porno version named Alien Erection?
Probably.
I'm sure there is.
It's
Ridley Spoot.
Yeah, probably. It's like instead of Ripley, it's probably like
Ripper.
Titley or something
Ripper.
like that. Yeah.
What else? What other characters are in there?
Ash is one
Ass.
we got. Yeah, and then Bishop, I guess. He probably
Bish tits. I don't know.
Yeah, bitch tits would probably be it. Yeah, something like that.
Let's see here. I don't know what else there is. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys wanna watch Alien, make sure you definitely tune in with us next week because we are watching Alien. That is your assignment. Go and do your duty. Go watch your movie. Come back here. That rhymed. I think I might keep that one.
Yeah, nice.
I might keep that one. I'm gonna write that one down. Ladies and gentlemen, go do your duty. Watch your movie. Watch Alien. We'll see you guys next week. Good night, everybody. This was MovieKombat.
Laters.